Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. I'm unable to make a normal video this week, so I've grouped together some of my favourite videos over the past year. I know some of you guys appreciate these videos and use them to fall asleep to or to study to, so without further ado, I'll let the videos play. Every single country around the world has at least one invasive species, with most countries spending millions or even billions to try and eradicate them. A non-native species doesn't have to be large or imposing to cause massive damage to an ecosystem, but in today's video I'll be focusing on the largest invasive species in the world. I'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by the largest invasive species that can be found there, but as this is quite a complicated topic, there are a few rules to go over. I'll be judging the animals based on their heaviest weights in the wild, and I won't be including livestock or domesticated animals. To be featured, the animal also has to be clearly invasive, as some non-native animals are classed as introduced as they have little effect on the ecosystem, and others are classed as naturalized as they've been in the area for many years and have become a part of the ecosystem, even though they aren't indigenous. This has also been an incredibly hard video to research, as it's hard to find examples of every single invasive animal on a continent, so if you feel like there are any large animals that I haven't mentioned, then let me know down below. In this video we'll be travelling around the world taking a look at a wide range of different animals, and we'll start off in the driest and windiest continent in the world. It shouldn't really be a surprise that we're starting off in Antarctica first, as it's one of the hardest places for any organism to establish themselves. You need to have certain adaptations to be able to deal with the freezing temperatures, and most animals would quickly starve. There aren't enough plants here year-round for herbivores, and unless you target penguins, seals, krill or fish, there's little prey here too. The only large animals that could really become invasive here are animals that are native to the Arctic, but it's extremely unrealistic to suggest that they'd be capable and willing to make the long journey south. Polar bears could become a real problem if they managed to make the long trip down to Antarctica, but there would be a lot of explaining to do if one of these apex predators suddenly showed up. On the islands surrounding Antarctica, there have been a few invasive species outbreaks, but it's still debated if these islands should be considered part of Antarctica or not. Famously, the South Georgia Islands had an invasive rat problem, and these rodents were threatening the native bird populations. After a massive and very difficult eradication project, South Georgia was declared rodent-free in 2018, and this has helped many of the native birds to bounce back. On mainland Antarctica, the only real invasive species are small insects, but it's possible that some larger organisms could invade in the future due to rising temperatures. One of the only ways that non-native species can make their way to Antarctica is on tourist and fishing vessels, and it's possible that the hitchhikers on these ships could establish themselves in the coming years. Rats and mice would really struggle, but it's possible that small populations could survive around research stations, and certain crabs, mussels, and barnacles could survive in its increasingly warming waters. Spider crabs have been invading Antarctic waters in recent years, and some experts believe that this will have massive negative effects on the native marine species. This means that the spider crabs would definitely qualify as an invasive species, but it's possible that these crustaceans are actually native. It's believed that they left Antarctic waters millions of years ago, but they are currently returning due to the warmer temperatures. For this reason, they can't really be classed as invasive, so it seems as though the only real invasive species on Antarctica are small insects. This means that Antarctica comes in at a sorry 7th place, but I guess being further down on this list is really a good thing. Africa is home to many competitive and brutal ecosystems, which is part of the reason why it has a relatively small amount of invasive species compared to other continents. Whether you're a predator or a herbivore, you have to compete with true giants and highly specialized animals, and large parts of the continent are also uninhabitable for most organisms. Even though Africa's freshwaters are extremely dangerous with many crocodiles, hippos, and predatory fish inhabiting them, some non-native fish have had some success here. Many different sport fish have been introduced over the years for fishing purposes, with many bass, carp, and catfish establishing themselves here. On land, most invasive mammals come in the form of domesticated animals and rodents, but there are a few large mammals that have been able to deal with all of the threats. The fallow deer is native to Eurasia, but today it's been introduced into many countries around the world. We have been introducing deer into different parts of the world for hundreds of years, and this is mostly for the purpose of sport hunting or food. Sailors would often introduce deer onto islands along trading routes so that they could harvest them as they travelled through, and colonizers would also introduce them so that they could hunt the same animals that they're used to back home. I've always thought that the latter is a very strange reason to introduce an animal, as you'd assume that one of the most interesting things about moving halfway around the world is that there are new animals and plants that surround you, but instead many of the settlers just introduced animals from back home. Fallow deer were introduced into South Africa in the early 1800s by the British, and this was originally for hunting purposes. Over the centuries, they have spread and become established in a few different regions, and this is bad news for the native grazers and the native plants. They've been so successful in some regions that there have been culls to try and control their population, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. There are a few other invasive deer species across Africa, such as the chital and the sika deer, but the European fallow deer is the largest. An extremely large fallow deer buck can weigh in at 150 kilograms, and this means that Africa is fit for 6th place. Asia is the largest continent in the world, but surprisingly, it doesn't have as many invasive species as you might think. Many Asian countries have invasive species that come from other parts of Asia, so it doesn't really make sense to include these animals in this video. The ecosystems that are usually more vulnerable to invaders are island ecosystems, and Asia's islands are no exception to this. Japan has many invaders that come from North America, including predatory fish, reptiles, rodents, and raccoons. On the Asian mainland, the landscapes vary greatly, but in most ecosystems there is a healthy amount of competition and apex predators. In some parts of Asia, you'll find giant brown bears and wolves. In others, you'll find lions and tigers. And on some of its islands, you'll find giant reptiles that reign supreme. On some parts of the continent, animals also have to deal with human encroachment and poaching threats. So if you want to survive here, you need to be very hardy. This is why there aren't many giant land animals that are invasive in the region, but in the water there are some giants that manage to survive here. The arapaima is one of the largest freshwater fish in the world, and it's native to the Amazon and Essequibo basins of South America. These bony-tongued fish are truly prehistoric, with some arapaima fossils found in Colombia dating back 23 million years. One of the reasons that they have been able to survive for this long mostly unchanged is because they are extremely adaptable, and they have a few adaptations that help them to survive in a variety of different habitats. These fish are able to breathe atmospheric oxygen, and this means that they can survive and hunt in waters where other fish would perish. They are also extremely muscular and bony fish, meaning that only the largest and most formidable aquatic predators can target them. I think it's safe to say that the laws regarding invasive species are pretty lax in some parts of Asia, as these fish have been imported into many Asian countries for aquaculture purposes. It's possible to visit fisheries that stock giant fish from around the world, and although it may seem easy at first, stopping these fish from escaping into the wild is surprisingly difficult. Flash floods and torrential rains are relatively common in tropical Asia, and this leads to the giant tropical fish in these fisheries escaping into the wild. Because the native fish aren't used to dealing with the arapaima, and because they are such efficient hunters, the native fish are easy prey, and they have negative effects on the native freshwater ecosystems by competing with and preying on native fish. The arapaima is capable of reaching weights of around 200 kilograms, meaning that Asia slots in at a close number 5. For hundreds of years, Europeans have been travelling around the world introducing non-native animals, but every now and again they would bring plants and animals home with them. This is part of the reason why Europe has so many invasive plants and animals today, but it also has plenty of animals that have become naturalised. In places such as the UK, there are many non-native deer, but some of them have been in the region for hundreds of years, and some of them were once native but had gone extinct. Today, there are many tropical birds that can be found in and around some of Europe's cities, and there are many fish and crustaceans that have arrived from over the pond in North America. To find some of the largest invasive species on the continent, you'll have to head over to Scandinavia, as there are 2 American invaders that have been very successful here. The North American beaver has a very healthy population in Finland, and today they even outnumber the native beavers in the country. Their introduction into Europe was essentially done by accident, because at one point in time the European beaver and the North American beaver were considered to be the same species. When the Eurasian beaver was struggling in Finland, beavers from North America were introduced, and they multiplied at an astonishing rate. I've covered this story in more detail in another video, so I'll leave that linked in the description below. In the early 20th century, white-tailed deer were also introduced into the country, and even though the odds were stacked against them, there were more than 100,000 of them in the country in 2021. I also covered this story in the same video I mentioned, so I'll keep it brief, but originally only 5 deer were introduced. The original population struggled at first and it didn't look like they were going to survive, and eventually some of the deer escaped from captivity and the rest were released. Altogether, 3 does and 3 bucks found their way into the wild, and a decade later another 6 deer were introduced. It's incredible that they managed to survive in the first place, but over the decades 12 white-tailed deer turned into over 100,000. Their numbers have purposely been reduced through hunting in recent years, but the white-tailed deer is still the largest invasive species in Europe. The largest male bucks can reach weights of around 220 kilograms, meaning that Europe slots in at number 4. North America is home to a few different hotspots where invasive species thrive, with Florida being the most famous and obvious example. This is where you can find a variety of giant reptiles that really shouldn't be here, such as pythons, caiman, tegu, monitors, and even Nile crocodiles. It was big news when Nile crocodiles were found in the Everglades back in 2016, but since then there has been little evidence to suggest that there are any more out there. I was going to include the Nile crocodile as the largest invasive species in North America, but as there hasn't been any concrete evidence to suggest that there are still some out there, it doesn't seem appropriate to include them. Many other aquatic invaders also enjoy life in Floridian waters, such as the aforementioned arapaima and green anacondas. Just like the Nile crocodile, reports of these animals in Florida are few and far between, but they have definitely been here in the past. Across the northern parts of North America, wild boar and boar-pig hybrids cause massive problems, with the native predators being unable to deal with the sheer numbers of them. The largest invasive species in North America isn't a giant predatory reptile or a rampaging boar, as instead it's a herd animal from southern Africa. The gemsbok is a large antelope that's endemic to southern Africa, and it typically thrives in harsh and arid environments. They are perfectly adapted to these ecosystems, and in their natural habitat they take advantage of melons and cucumbers to get the water that they need. This means that if they were transported to another dry ecosystem in another part of the world, then they could take over, and this is exactly what happened in New Mexico in the 1960s. Initially, 93 were introduced into the state for hunting purposes, but today they have an estimated population of around 3,000 to 6,000 individuals. Part of the reason that they have been so successful is because of the lack of large predators, because even though cougars will regularly target their young in the state, they are used to dealing with many more predators across their native range. If New Mexico still had a healthy jaguar population, then things wouldn't be as bad, but instead gemsbok are putting serious strains on the ecosystem. They often outcompete the native desert herbivores such as pronghorns, bighorn sheep and mule deer, so really a solution is needed in the future to stop them from completely taking over. Gemsbok males can reach a maximum weight of around 240 kilograms, meaning that they are larger than all of the reptile invaders, and this slots North America in at 3rd place. Most of Oceania was separated from the rest of the world for millions of years, and this means that invaders from other parts of the world can have a massive effect on their ecosystems. In countries such as Australia and New Zealand, there have been many extinctions that have been caused by humans and invasive species, but most of the invaders that cause the biggest problems aren't giants. Cane toads, stoats and cats have decimated many of the native species, and these animals were introduced after Europeans arrived in this part of the world. In the 1900s, in New Zealand, many different species of deer were introduced, including the largest deer in the world, the moose. Most of the deer species are still around today, but the last confirmed sighting of a moose in New Zealand was in 1952. Before the large mammal introductions, the only native mammals on New Zealand were bats, so of course their presence massively changed the ecosystem immediately. Over the years, Australia has had its own massive mammal introductions, including the giant and formidable water buffaloes. Water buffaloes were first introduced into Australia in the early 1800s for farming purposes, but when some of the settlements that they were brought to were abandoned, they soon took over the nearby swampland. Because of the lack of large land predators in Australia, they soon took over, with only the saltwater crocodile being able to take down fully grown adults. In 2022, it was estimated that there were around 200,000 of them in the country, and their presence has led to habitat degradation and water pollution. The water buffalo is the largest invasive species in Oceania, but the species that has been introduced is a domesticated species, so it doesn't qualify for this video. If we head out of the swamps and into the more arid areas of Australia, you'll find the second largest invasive species, and it's another mammal with a massive population. Dromedary camels were introduced into Australia in the 19th century by the British, and they were used as beasts of burden to carry important equipment around. When motorised transport became more accessible in the region, then there was no need for the camels, and many of them were set free. By 2008, it was estimated that there were over 1 million camels in the country, and even after culling attempts, their numbers remained strong. This is bad news for the native animals and plants, as they haven't evolved with these giant desert animals, so they are ill-equipped to deal with them. The dromedary camel has a maximum weight of around 690 kilograms, and this means that Oceania comes in at second place. Now I'm sure the final inclusion in this video isn't a surprise to many, as it's possibly one of the most famous invasive species stories in the world. I've covered this story countless times on the channel before, but if you're unaware, it all starts with a man called Pablo Escobar. He was a notorious and wildly successful drug lord, and he liked to spend his money in strange ways. He'd import animals from all over the world to keep on his estates, but after his death in 1993, some of his hippos that he had collected found their way into the wild. By 2007, these animals numbered around 16 individuals, but today their population is thought to number around 200. This is not only bad news for the native wildlife, but it's also dangerous for the local people, as hippos are some of the most aggressive and unpredictable animals on this planet. There have been multiple attacks in Colombia over the years, and millions of dollars have been spent trying to find a way to deal with the problem. Some of the hippos have been shot and some have been sterilized, but they still manage to increase in number. There are no animals in South America apart from man that can take down a fully grown hippo, and transporting the entire population is almost impossible. It seems as though this is going to be an issue for many years to come, and the hippo is easily the largest invasive species in the world. Hippos can reach a maximum weight of around 3.2 metric tons, and this means that South America easily takes the top spot. Pinnipeds are a very playful and inquisitive group of mammals, and there are 33 different species of them alive today. Some of them can be seen battling it out on cold windy beaches, others are forced to dodge polar bears on sea ice, and some are feared by penguins and humans alike. In today's video, we'll be travelling around the world taking a look at some of the most interesting species, as we'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest pinniped. Because pinnipeds are free to move around our oceans, there are a few rules that we need to go over, because just like birds, they sometimes get lost and end up in places where they don't really belong. To be featured in this video, the pinniped must be a resident to the continent, and I'll be ranking the animals based on their maximum weight in the wild. Without further ado, we can head over to our first location, and for the first time in a long time, we won't be heading to Antarctica first. Africa has its fair share of giant mammals, but the vast majority of them are found on land. If you look at the global distribution of all pinniped species, you'll notice that only some parts of Africa boast any pinniped species at all. The Cape fur seal is easily the most well-known and numerous species on the continent, but this mammal isn't only found in the waters around southern Africa. That's because the name Cape fur seal actually refers to a subspecies, and the other subspecies of this seal is found around the coasts of southern Australia. A fur seal's life is very rarely carefree, as there are predators both on the land and in the water that want to take a chunk out of you. In both Africa and Australia, they are targets for marine predators such as great white sharks and the arguably more terrifying orca. But on the shores of Africa, they also need to keep an eye out for lions and hyenas. The desert lions of the Skeleton Coast are known for their seal hunting tendencies, and this is a reaction to the scarcity of their normal prey in the region. In between dodging predators, they do have a little time to hunt, and they mostly target small fish, but in rare instances they'll even hunt sharks and seabirds. These mammals can be found in giant colonies and play a very important role in their ecosystem, but they aren't the only pinnipeds that can be found on the continent. Africa is sometimes visited by giant species from southern waters, but these animals rarely stay long and are often lost. Some sources claim that the Cape fur seal is the only resident pinniped in Africa, but there's another species on the northern coast that often goes under the radar. The Mediterranean monk seal has quite a scattered distribution today, but some of its last remaining strongholds are along the African coasts. As you might have guessed from my wording, they aren't exactly thriving in the wild, as there are only around 700 individuals across 4 isolated subpopulations. Their decline was of course caused by man, as it's thought that the Romans hunted them relentlessly, and in the 20th century they were targeted by fishermen as they damaged nets and stole fish. It's a real shame that we decimated their populations in the past, as they are incredibly intelligent and distinctive seals. They'll often rest and care for their young in caves that can only be accessed underwater, and they have been observed lifting rocks to look for their desired prey. This rare seal is also the largest seal that can be found in African waters, with a maximum weight of around 400 kilograms. This means that Africa slots in at number 7, and the Mediterranean monk seal can also be found in our next location. The coasts of Europe are home to a wide variety of seals, but there are also some freshwater subspecies which can be found in its giant lakes. The Saimaa ringed seal is a freshwater ringed seal subspecies, and it's endemic to Lake Saimaa in Finland. They spend most of their days feeding on European freshwater fish species such as perch and roach, but on land they need to look out for predators such as white-tailed eagles. Even though these freshwater seals are interesting oddities, they are still relatively small, and to find the larger species we'll have to head into the ocean. The harbour seal is one of the most common species that can be found around the continent, with around 100,000 of them being found in European waters. This species can also be found along the coasts of North America and Asia, and even though they have a giant population, they are still relatively small seals. The grey seal is another species that enjoys living in Europe's salt waters, with around 40% of all grey seals living around the UK. This seal's long face makes it appear almost like a dog, and I'm sure any divers that are lucky enough to have met one will also tell you that they act like dogs too. They are extremely inquisitive, and will often follow and approach divers to try and work them out. These water puppies are arguably the most adored species that can be found in Europe, but to find the larger species you'll have to head north. Iceland and the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard are home to a wide range of Arctic pinnipeds, with some of them having striking colorations and adaptations. The hooded seal has a wide range across the northern Atlantic Ocean, and it's known for both its blotchy black and grey coloration, and its inflatable sac which the males use to attract females and intimidate rivals. The bearded seal is one of the largest seals across the continent, but in my opinion this species is misnamed. Its beard is more like a mustache, and its large mustache helps it to find fish, clams and squid on the ocean floor. The largest pinniped in Europe also shares its waters with this distinguished seal, and they also have a mustache that can rival them. There are over 5,500 walruses that can be found in and around the Svalbard archipelago, and in this area they need to keep their eyes out for predators. This saying doesn't really work for the walrus as they famously have very bad eyesight, and instead they rely on their smell to sense danger. The polar bear is a master at hunting unsuspecting seals, and they'll even hunt walruses from time to time. Even though walruses will sometimes fight back using their tusks, in most cases polar bears are able to overpower them. In the water, they hunt in a very similar way to the bearded seals, hunting a wide range of animals on the ocean floor. This diet allows them to reach monstrous sizes, and they're easily the largest pinniped that can be found in European waters. The Atlantic walrus is generally smaller than its Pacific counterpart, with it reaching a maximum weight of around 1.5 metric tons. The Atlantic walrus's bulk means that Europe is fit for 6th place, and for our next section we'll be heading over to a neighbour. Because Asia is right next to Europe, it shares many of the same pinniped species, but there are a few that are absent from Europe altogether. In Lake Baikal, you'll find a very well-known freshwater seal in the Baikal Nerpa, and unlike the Saimaa ringed seal, it's a distinct species and not a subspecies. Lake Baikal is the deepest lake in the world, and it spends most of its time feeding on the fish and crustaceans that can be found in its depths. By living in a lake, their lives are a little more carefree as they don't have to worry about predatory marine mammals or sharks, but on land they are sometimes targeted by brown bears. This is part of the reason why they prefer to rest on the islands along the lake instead of on shore, but in the winter the solid ice means that they are more at risk. Thankfully, these seals have very healthy numbers in the wild, with an estimated population of around 80,000 to 100,000 individuals. The Japanese sea lion was a marine species that inhabited the waters around Japan and the Korean peninsula, but the last sighting of this animal was in 1974. They were overhunted for their skins and their blubber, and they were almost completely wiped out in the blink of an eye. It's tragic that these animals no longer swim in our oceans, but as we'll get to later on in the video, these aren't the only pinnipeds that have gone extinct in the past few hundred years. Today, one of the more common seals in the Far East is the spotted seal, but the harbour seal is again another common resident. In my opinion, the most beautiful seal in the world is the ribbon seal, with its black and white or brown and white pattern being matched by no other pinniped. There are also a few fur seals and sea lions that can be found along Asia's coasts, such as the Steller sea lion, which is the largest sea lion in the world. This mammal's numbers have been massively affected by overfishing in recent years, but thankfully in some parts of their range they are bouncing back. Adult males can weigh over 1.1 metric tons, which is over 100 kilograms heavier than the largest polar bear on record. Asia shares the Steller sea lion and many other pinnipeds with North America, as a wide range of species can be found along the coasts of the Bering Sea. The largest pinniped in Asia can also be found in North America, and it's a species that we've already taken a look at. The Pacific walrus lives a very similar life to its Atlantic counterpart, but it has a few physical differences. Pacific walruses tend to have longer tusks and thicker skulls, and of course they are a little bit larger. In the wild, the Pacific walrus can reach a maximum weight of around 2 metric tons, which means that Asia slots in at a close number 5. Once again, North America shares many pinniped species with both Europe and Asia, and just like these continents, it also has a few freshwater seals. The Iliamna lake seal is found in Alaska's largest body of fresh water, and it's one of only 2 freshwater harbour seal populations. The other population is found in the freshwater lakes of northern Quebec, meaning that North America is the only place where you can find freshwater harbour seals. Along the islands of North America, you can spot a few endemic species, with one of the most famous examples being the Hawaiian monk seal. This iconic pinniped is the only seal native to Hawaii, but unfortunately, just like the Mediterranean monk seal, it's also endangered. It's completely reliant on conservation, with a population of around 1,400 individuals in the wild. They've been affected by human encroachment, hunting, and fishing nets over the years, but thankfully today they are protected. These mammals appear to be full of character, as they've been witnessed interacting with other animals in strange ways. They'll sometimes cuddle up to sea turtles on beaches, and they have been known to get eels stuck in their noses from time to time. If you go back 100 years, then there was another monk seal on the other side of North America, but unfortunately today they are presumed extinct. The Caribbean monk seal was once pretty widespread along the east coast of southern North America and northern South America, but overhunting and overfishing led to their demise, and the last individual was spotted in Jamaica in 1952. It's impossible to talk about North American pinnipeds without mentioning the California sea lion, as it's the most common sea lion on the continent, being found along most of the west coast. This sea lion sometimes shares its habitat with the northern fur seal, which is another species that can be found in the far east of Asia. They can be found in giant colonies in a few different locations across their range, and they have an estimated population of around 1.3 million. This may sound like a lot, but it's nothing compared to their historic numbers, as we humans have ruthlessly targeted them for hundreds of years. They are the species that's being slaughtered in this now very well-known image, and an estimated 2.5 million of them were killed from 1786 to 1867. Unfortunately, their numbers are still declining across much of their range, and it's believed that overfishing may be part of the problem. To find the largest pinniped in North America, we'll have to stay on the west coast, as this is where you can find the northern elephant seal. This seal is called so because of its elephant-like proboscis, and it uses this to make strange sounding calls. The males of this species are many times the size of the females, and they will battle each other sometimes to the death for control of the beach. A high-ranking bull can have a harem of around 30 to 100 cows, and many of the bulls are willing to die for this prize. Because of their colossal size, they are only really targeted by great white sharks and orcas, and for these predators they would be a pretty substantial meal. The northern elephant seal can reach a maximum weight of around 2.3 metric tons, and this means that they dwarf even the largest walrus. For this reason, North America slots in at 4th place, and this mammal must be pretty intimidating to meet in the water. Now, one of the main reasons that I chose this topic was so that Antarctica didn't come in last place for once, but there's a reason why I haven't covered this topic sooner. The final 3 continents all have the same largest pinniped, but I've decided to rank them differently. The southern elephant seal is the largest pinniped in the world, and it's a resident of Antarctica, South America, and Oceania. Like I've done in previous videos in this series, I'll rank the final 3 continents based on other pinnipeds that can be found there as well as the southern elephant seal, and that means that first we'll be heading to South America. Just like North America, South America also has a few pinniped species that can be found on its offshore islands, including the Galapagos fur seal and the Juan Fernandez fur seal. These 2 species are the smallest and second smallest fur seals in the world, and they both take advantage of the biodiverse reefs that surround the islands that they inhabit. Surprisingly, the Galapagos fur seal isn't the only pinniped that can be found on the shores of the Galapagos Islands, as the Galapagos sea lion also hunts in these rich waters. Just like the Galapagos fur seal, the Galapagos sea lion is the smallest of its kind, and it's believed to be the closest relative of the aforementioned California sea lion. Back on the mainland, you can find more fur seals in the South American fur seal, and you can also find the second largest sea lion in the world in the South American sea lion. This giant is highly sexually dimorphic, with males being over double the size of females, and having a visible mane and upturned snouts. If it wasn't for the southern elephant seal, the South American sea lion would be the largest pinniped on the continent, but the southern elephant seal shares its home with these mammals, and it really makes them look tiny. This species lives a very similar life to its northern cousin, but of course they get much larger. It's really quite difficult to fully comprehend their size, but the bulls are around 40% larger than the northern elephant seal bulls, and they're nearly twice the size of a male walrus, and 6 to 7 times larger than Kodiak and polar bears. Of course, the southern elephant seal will never meet these predators across their range, but surprisingly they're still targets for the most dominant marine predators. If they come across potential predators in the wild, then it's a good idea to dive, as they can reach depths of almost 2.4 kilometers. This means that your average elephant seal has seen things that we humans will likely never see, and even though they are relatively sluggish on land, it's a good idea to give them a wide berth. The southern elephant seal can reach a maximum weight of around 4 metric tons, but some experts believe that they can get even larger. This means that because of reasons that I explained earlier, South America slots in at 3rd place, and our next continent is another elephant seal hunting ground. Oceania isn't exactly known for its pinnipeds, but there are a few interesting species that can be found here. As I mentioned at the start of the video, the Afro-Australian fur seal inhabits Australian waters, but there's another fur seal species in the Australasian fur seal, which can also be found in New Zealand. Australia only has one endemic pinniped species, and it's one of the most beautiful sea lions in the world. The Australian sea lion is known for its relatively light and warm coloration, but unfortunately it's one of the rarest of its kind. This might have something to do with its reproduction, as they have one of the longest gestation periods of any mammal, with it lasting around 18 months. When the pups are large enough, they can take advantage of the diverse ecosystems around Australia's coasts, but of course these are very dangerous waters too. Further south in New Zealand, you can spot the glorious New Zealand sea lion, which takes the unwanted title of the rarest sea lion in the world, having an estimated population of around 10,000 individuals. This species is endemic to New Zealand, and it's one of the largest animals that can be found in and around the country. It's one of New Zealand's only native mammals, and it's one of the most distinctive of all sea lions. Females will often travel great distances inland to protect their pups, with some mothers being spotted 2 kilometers away from the ocean. Some of the penguins of New Zealand share this strange behaviour, as for most of their existence there were no land predators in New Zealand, meaning that it was a lot safer to head inland. So far, it's difficult to argue that Oceania should be placed higher than South America, but Oceania isn't only home to the southern elephant seal, which can be found on New Zealand's southern islands, but it's also home to the leopard seal. For a long time, leopard seals were considered to be visitors to New Zealand, but relatively recently they were reclassified as residents. These giant predators are easily the most intimidating pinnipeds on the planet, and tragically in one unfortunate case, one leopard seal did claim the life of a human. They appear to be completely fascinated with us, often forming bonds with divers and offering them penguins to eat. In the wild, they'll feed on pretty much anything that they can catch and overpower, with them being particularly fond of penguins and sometimes other pinnipeds. This allows them to reach a maximum weight of around 590 kilograms, which is around the same weight as a large male polar bear. This seal's presence along with the southern elephant seal means that Oceania slots in its second place, and for our final section we'll be heading somewhere very cold. Antarctica is easily the continent with the most pinnipeds, and some of the seals that call these waters home can't be found anywhere else in the world. The crab-eater seal has a very misleading name as they don't actually eat crabs, as instead they mostly feed on krill, with it making up around 90% of their diets. It has specialised teeth that allow it to filter krill from the water, and the aforementioned leopard seal also shares this adaptation. The crab-eater seal is pretty large, reaching lengths of around 2 meters, but arguably what's more impressive is their population. It's the most abundant seal species in the world, and it's extremely hard to estimate exactly how many of them there are. It's believed that there are anywhere from 15 to 75 million of them on the planet today, so it's possible that they could have a similar population to the country of Thailand. On the other hand of the scale, you have the Ross seal, which is the rarest and least well known of all the Antarctic seals. On many of the Antarctic islands, you'll find fur seals chilling with king penguins, and nearer the Antarctic mainland, you can spot the feisty Weddell seal. The Weddell seal uses fast ice environments for extra protection from predators, as they'll often carve holes in the ice to breathe from, and this means that orcas are unable to get to them as there is too much solid ice in the way. Of course, Antarctica is also home to the giant southern elephant seal and the leopard seal, and its collection of various different giant seals means that it easily takes the top spot. So finally, there's a video for all of you that complain that Antarctica always comes in at last place, and I'm sure that I'll come up with another one in the future. If you're looking for some of the strangest and highly specialised mammals in the world, then you can't go wrong looking in this planet's fresh waters, and you can find some real giants lurking in the depths. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at some of the world's largest freshwater mammals, but this is quite a hard category to define. Most mammals found in freshwaters aren't fully aquatic and spend most of their time on land, whereas others are fully aquatic but spend large parts of their lives in marine environments. To be featured in this video, the animal must spend large parts of their lives in freshwater, and they need to rely on freshwater ecosystems in some way. I'll be ranking the animals based on their maximum weight in the wild, and of course I won't be including invasive or introduced species. We'll be travelling around the world taking a look at many different freshwater ecosystems, but we'll be starting off somewhere very familiar. Now I'll keep this section very short and sweet, as Antarctica usually comes in at last place in these videos, and it doesn't have any freshwater ecosystems that can support mammals. It has temporary rivers that form from glacial meltwater, and it also has a few lakes that are under thick layers of ice. You won't find any large or small freshwater mammals here, but of course Antarctica has plenty of marine mammals that thrive in its salt waters. For this reason, Antarctica slots in at 7th place, but I'm sure many of you saw that coming when you clicked on the video. Australia's freshwater ecosystems are not only vibrant as they are also very dangerous, as its northern waterways are home to one of the deadliest predators in the world. The saltwater crocodile is one of the largest and most formidable freshwater predators, but as its name suggests, it also hunts in brackish and salt waters. This reptile's presence would make it difficult for any freshwater mammal to survive here, and this might be part of the reason why there are only 2 native freshwater mammals that can be found here. The small island nations that make up Oceania have no real freshwater mammals to speak of, so the 2 mammals from Australia are the only animals in this fight. The racali is arguably one of the most interesting rodents in the world, as it isn't really what it first appears to be. To many, it just looks like a rat that's surprisingly good at swimming, but its common nickname of the Australian otter gives us a clue into its lifestyle. This mammal can be found in Australia, New Guinea, and on a few small islands, and in some of these areas, it's the only freshwater mammal. Without competition from larger aquatic and semi-aquatic mammals such as dolphins and otters, it's been able to take over their roles in the ecosystem, and over millions of years they have become efficient freshwater predators. They are mostly nocturnal and carnivorous, and prey on a variety of different fish, crustaceans, amphibians, and reptiles. This protein-rich diet helps them to reach a maximum weight of around 1.3 kilograms, but there's another iconic mammal that inhabits the freshwaters of Australia. The platypus is one of the strangest mammals on this planet, and it has many adaptations and behaviours that aren't very mammal-like. They lay eggs and have a venomous spur on their hind legs, and of course they possess a duck-like bill. This bill is essential for the platypus to find their prey, as it's full of electroreceptors that help it to find crustaceans, worms, and insect larvae on the bottom of rivers. Platypuses seem to have the perfect blend of strange and cute, and if you're anything like me, then you find them very endearing. The platypus is the largest freshwater mammal on the continent, as it can reach a maximum weight of around 3 kilograms. This means that Oceania slots in at number 6, and even though it doesn't have a wide range of freshwater mammals, at least it has some very interesting ones. If you know where to look, you can find a wide variety of European freshwater mammals, but not all of them are giants. The European water vole has struggled in recent years due to invasive predators such as the American mink, but thanks to conservation efforts they have managed to bounce back in certain areas. In some ecosystems across Eurasia, they share their waters with the water shrew, which is one of the very rare venomous mammals. This venom helps them to subdue their prey, but it wouldn't be much use against the Eurasian otter. This mammal is the most widespread otter in the world, and it's also one of the largest species. They take advantage of both fresh and saltwater ecosystems, and in many European rivers and lakes they are apex predators. They'll feed on pretty much anything they wish to in their ecosystem, and in some very rare cases they'll even hunt the young of another freshwater mammal. The Eurasian beaver is very similar in size and appearance to the North American beaver, and in some parts of Europe they even inhabit the same ecosystems. Adults are more than a match for the Eurasian otter as they can weigh up to 40 kilograms, but sometimes sneaky or desperate otters will target their young. The largest freshwater mammal in Europe isn't a mustelid or even a rodent, as instead it's an animal that's most often associated with marine environments. The Saima ringed seal is one of the rarest seals in the world, with only around 500 individuals in the wild today. They are one of a few different freshwater seals that can be found in a few lakes dotted around the world, with this subspecies being found in Lake Saima. Like other freshwater seals, they are believed to have slowly become isolated from the ocean, and over thousands of years they have adapted to life in freshwater lakes. This subspecies isn't the only freshwater seal in Europe, as there is also another subspecies over the border in the European part of Russia. These two seals are both subspecies of the marine ringed seal, but the Saima ringed seal has a slightly greater maximum weight. The Saima ringed seal can reach a maximum weight of around 90 kilograms, which means it's the largest freshwater mammal in Europe. This means that Europe slots in at number 5, and for our next section we'll be making the short trip over to Asia. Because Europe and Asia are connected, they share many of the same freshwater mammals. As well as the Eurasian otter, it has 3 other otter species, but Asian rivers and lakes are home to a few creatures that can't be found anywhere else in the world. The Lake Baikal seal is another freshwater pinniped, but unlike the freshwater seals of Europe, it's a distinctive species and not a subspecies. This means it's the only exclusively freshwater pinniped species, and they are also one of the smallest true seals. Lake Baikal is the deepest lake in the world, and the seals mostly target the endemic fish and crustaceans that inhabit its depths. There are only a handful of freshwater dolphins dotted around the world, and Asia is home to 3 of them. The South Asian river dolphin and the Ganges river dolphin look very similar to their counterparts in South America, but they have toothier mouths and they lack the iconic pink coloration. As they are found in murky waters, they have poor eyesight, and they use echolocation to find their prey. The Irrawaddy dolphin looks more like your traditional marine dolphin, and even though they can be found in marine and brackish habitats, there are populations that spend their entire lives in fresh waters. They'll feed on a wide variety of aquatic prey, and like some marine dolphins, they'll work together to corner fish. In some areas, they have formed fragile alliances with fishermen by working together to catch fish, but in most cases around the world, the fisherman is the enemy of the river dolphin. If the Irrawaddy river dolphin is able to make it to maturity, then they can reach some monstrous sizes, with a maximum weight of around 200 kilograms. This slots Asia in at number 4, and this won't be the last time that we take a look at a river dolphin. Now, the next 2 continents have the same largest freshwater mammal, but I've decided to rank one higher than the other. These videos are just a bit of fun and shouldn't be taken too seriously, but if you're annoyed by this decision, then you can always complain in the comments down below if you wish. So without further ado, we'll move on to our next continent, and when it comes to wildlife, it's one of the most diverse continents in the world. North America's waters vary greatly from the icy lakes of northern Canada to the crocodile-filled rivers of Central America. Across large parts of the continents, you can find the North American river otter and the sea otter, with the latter almost exclusively being found in marine waters. Further south, you can find the neotropical otter, which is also found over large parts of South America. The distinctive muskrat may look very similar to the aforementioned ricali, but unlike its cousin down under, it mostly feeds on aquatic plants. The much larger North American beaver also shares its love of plants, and one colony of beavers in Canada is responsible for creating the largest beaver dam in the world. On the northeastern side of the continent, you can find one of the strangest mammals on this planet, and it's named after its peculiar adaptation. The star-nosed mole is a semi-aquatic mole, and it's named after its extremely sensitive appendage. It uses its so-called star to find insect larvae, worms, and crustaceans, and it dispatches these food items rapidly. It's often described as the fastest eating mammal, being able to identify and consume its prey within 120 milliseconds. Even though this mammal is an impressive predator, it's by no means the largest freshwater mammal in North America, as it's around the same size as a hamster. North America also has its own freshwater seals in both Alaska and Canada, but none of these seals are distinctive species. To find the true giants of both North and South America, you'll have to head to the warm east coasts, as this is where you can find the West Indian manatee. Now, some of you may argue that the West Indian manatee is clearly only a marine species, but not only are they found in both fresh and salt waters, but in places such as Florida, they rely on freshwater springs in the cooler months. Even though they look quite plump, they lack a thick layer of insulating body fat, which means that they are limited to the warmer parts of the continent. They are extremely slow-moving and peaceful creatures, and this tragically means that they are often hit by people in speedboats. These giants are also extremely reliant on seagrass, and they'll munch on it for up to 6 hours a day. During this time, they consume 4 to 10% of their body weight in plants, and this helps them to reach some pretty impressive sizes. The West Indian manatee has been recorded with a maximum weight of 1,655 kilograms, and this means that it's the largest strictly aquatic freshwater mammal. This means that controversially, North America comes in at 3rd place, and for our next section we'll be heading south. Now, as I've already stated, South America has the same largest freshwater mammal as North America, but I've decided to rank South America higher as it has more giant freshwater mammals. The giant river otter is the largest otter that can be found in freshwater ecosystems, reaching lengths of up to 1.8 meters. These mammals live in family groups and are very vocal, and they work together to catch many of the weird and wonderful fish that can be found in South American waters. They have a few natural enemies such as caiman and jaguars, but they often work together to outwit and avoid these threats. Some forest animals will regularly enter rivers and lakes such as the South American tapirs, but there are other large herbivores that are more at home in these murky waters. The two species of capybara thrive in wetland ecosystems, as they are great swimmers and feed on many of the grasses and aquatic plants in these areas. When they sense danger, they'll usually dive straight in the water to escape, and even though jaguars will usually follow them, they are rarely successful once they are both in the water. There are around 5 species of river dolphin that can be found in South America, with the Amazon river dolphin being the most famous and iconic species. These chunky mammals are usually found in waters with lots of tannins, which means that echolocation is more effective than using their sight. Under the surface, these waters are alien and intimidating places to be, but the Amazon river dolphin is perfectly adapted to this environment. The koipu or nutria is one of the most successful semi-aquatic mammals, as they have invasive populations in many different countries around the globe. Of course, it's not their fault that they're invasive, as they were introduced by humans, but once they become established, they're very hard to get rid of. As well as the West Indian manatee, these waters are also home to the Amazonian manatee, which is a lot smaller than its cousin. The Amazonian manatee is the only manatee species that's only found in freshwater environments, and it spends the majority of its life feeding on aquatic plants. Like the other manatees, they have been negatively affected by human-related factors over the years, so hopefully they can bounce back in the future. So even though North and South America have the same largest freshwater mammal, South America comes out on top, simply because of the quantity of giant water-loving mammals. When it comes to wildlife, Africa is home to some of the deadliest lakes and rivers, so to be able to survive here you need to be pretty hardy. There are a few different otter species that have to dodge the countless freshwater predators, with the most distinctive species being the rarely seen Congo clawless otter. Africa also has its own manatee species in the West African manatee, which is a little larger on average than the Amazonian manatee. This continent is also home to a few smaller distinctive mammals that rely on freshwaters such as the marsh mongoose, but the largest freshwater mammals in Africa aren't that hard to find. There are 2 species of hippo in Africa, the lesser known pygmy hippo and the deadly common hippo. Mu Deng has made the pygmy hippo a lot more famous in recent years, and hopefully this will drive more people to care about their conservation as they're endangered. The common hippo is a far more dangerous beast, killing more people in Africa than most African predators do. Even though hippos often come on land to feed on grasses and to terrorize all of the animals that look at them the wrong way, it would be difficult for the hippo to survive without fresh water. They need to prevent their skin from drying out, otherwise they risk getting a nasty sunburn, and this is why when water holes dry up, they'll wallow in the mud. Of course, they also rely on fresh water for drinking, and without it, it's likely that they'd overheat. For this reason, I think it's fair to class them as a freshwater mammal, and this means that they are the largest freshwater mammals in the world. The largest hippos can reach weights of around 3.2 metric tons in the wild, and this dwarfs even the largest manatees. For this reason, the hippo and Africa take the top spot, and I'm sure this is a mammal that most people wouldn't like to swim with. Spiders aren't exactly the most popular animals on the planet, but they do play a very important role in some of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world. Without spiders, we would face an insect population explosion, which would lead to agricultural devastation and an increased risk of certain deadly diseases such as malaria. Spiders take out around 400 to 800 million metric tons of insects annually, but some of the spiders that we'll be focusing on today can target animals that are much larger than insects. That's because today we'll be travelling around the world taking a look at some of the most interesting and bizarre spiders, as we'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest spider. We'll be judging them based on their maximum weight instead of their leg span, as some spiders have relatively tiny bodies but really long legs. If you haven't guessed already, this isn't the best video to watch if you're arachnophobic, but maybe this video could serve as exposure therapy, and once you learn more about these interesting animals, then you might start to appreciate them. Without further ado, we can head over to our first continent, and unfortunately it's pretty easy to predict where we have to travel to first. Antarctica is simply too harsh and unforgiving for any spiders to live here, and even if they could face the brutal conditions, then they'd have nothing to feed on. It is possible that a few tiny spiders might have been able to sneak onto a few research stations, but they likely wouldn't last long due to the lack of food. There are a few small species of spider that can be found on the subantarctic islands, but unfortunately it's mostly pinnipeds, penguins, and other seabirds on the mainland. For this reason, Antarctica slots in at 7th place, and thankfully it's the only continent that's totally devoid of spiders. Europe isn't really known for having any giant or deadly spiders, but there are a few interesting species that can be found here. The wasp spider is a colourful species that can be found in Central and Northern Europe, and its coloration and pattern make it appear like a wasp. This form of Batesian mimicry is a great way to make some predators leave you alone, but birds and lizards will still happily chow down on them. Other beautiful European species include the ladybird spider and the flower spiders, but the latter can also be found in North America. The diving bell spider is an incredibly distinctive species of spider, as it's the only spider that's known to live almost entirely underwater. They rest, hunt, and mate below the surface in freshwater habitats, and they only occasionally surface to replenish their oxygen supply. They survive underwater by creating a silk diving bell nest, which they use to breathe while hunting small invertebrates. Most of the time, the deadliest spiders in the world aren't the largest species, and that's definitely the case for the deadliest spider in Europe. The European black widow has the most potent venom on the continent, but bites are usually very painful and nothing more. In some very rare cases, they can prove to be fatal, but spiders aren't as dangerous as we've been led to believe. Because most of us seem to have an inherent fear of these animals, it's easy to assume that they are extremely dangerous, but only around 20 to 25 people are killed by spiders globally each year. Despite this, it's a good idea to be cautious, especially when you're handling a spider with potent venom. Strangely, the largest spiders in Europe all reach a similar size, but to find the spider that most sources claim is the largest, we'll have to head over to the Iberian Peninsula. The Gibraltar funnel web spider is quite an intimidating species, and like other funnel webs, it uses a complex system of webs to detect its prey. Unlike other funnel webs from around the world, it doesn't have particularly potent venom, but it is relatively large for a European species. The Gibraltar funnel web has a body length of around 3.5 centimeters, and even though it's hard to find an accurate measurement for its weight, judging by other similarly sized species, it likely weighs around 4 grams. This means that Europe takes the 6th place spot, and for our next section, we'll be heading to the other side of the world. To many, Australia is known for being a country that's full of deadly snakes and spiders, and even though there are some giant spiders here, not many of them are dangerous. If you live in Australia, then you've likely run into some kind of huntsman spider, and even though these guys can be pretty intimidating, they are relatively shy and harmless. The reason why they have such an infamous reputation is because they are commonly found in houses and cars, so they often make people jump when they are spotted. One of the largest spiders in Australia is the golden huntsman, but because they don't have the bulkiest bodies, they aren't the heaviest. Just like the wasp spiders of Europe, the bird-dropping spider uses mimicry to avoid the attention of predators, but instead of imitating an insect, they imitate bird poop. Spiders aren't often described as cute, but you could make a strong argument that many of the jumping spiders are. Their giant eyes and tiny bodies mean that they aren't as intimidating as other spiders, and there are some beautifully colourful species out there. There are a few different peacock jumping spiders that can be found across Australia, and they are called so because the males will impress the females in a similar way to how peacocks do. Really, you'd think that the females would appreciate this flamboyant display, but if the females are unimpressed, they will sometimes kill and eat the males. The fringed jumping spider is an incredibly intelligent spider, and they have baffled scientists for years. The few arachnophobes that are still watching will be happy to learn that they mostly feed on spiders, and they have proven that they can learn from previous experiences and they can even solve mazes. They have even been known to pluck at webs to mimic prey, and then they will devour the spider when it gets too close. Even though nobody has been killed by a spider in Australia since 1979, there are a few potentially deadly species that can be found here. The redback spider's venom is potent enough to take you out if you're really unlucky and you refuse medical attention, but bites are rare and antivenom is very easy to come by. The Sydney funnel-web spider is often described as being one of the most dangerous spiders to humans, and this is not just because of their potent, fast-acting venom, but also because of their proximity to human-inhabited areas. A bite from a Sydney funnel-web can kill you in as little as 15 minutes, but thanks to awareness and anti-venom, fatalities are almost unheard of. The other smaller islands that make up Oceania don't really have any spiders that rival the size of Australia's spiders, and the largest species in Oceania can be found in Queensland. The Queensland whistling tarantula is called so because it can produce a hissing or whistling sound when threatened, and if you don't pay attention to these warnings then you might just get a bite. Even though a bite from this giant isn't fatal, it'll still be painful, and this is mostly due to their size. They have a maximum body length of around 9 centimeters, and a maximum body weight of around 30 grams. This means that Oceania takes the 5th place spot, and next up we'll be heading to North America. The North American continent is full of weird and wonderful species from north to south, and there's one species in particular that doesn't really act like a spider. Kipling's jumping spider can be found in a few different Central American countries, and it's become famous for its mostly herbivorous diet. They feed on protein and fat-rich nubs called Beltian bodies, and they'll even coexist with ants that they could potentially hunt. It's believed that around 90% of their diet is made up of this protein-rich plant food, and no other spider is known to feed in this way. In Canada, the spiders are relatively small, mostly due to the colder weather, with certain dock spiders being some of the largest that can be found in the country. There are a few striking smaller spiders across the continent, such as the red widow, the orchard orb-weaver, and the spiny-backed orb-weaver, but there are also plenty of giants here too. There are plenty of large orb-weavers and tarantulas across Central and Southern North America, but some stand out more than others. The Johnny Cash tarantula was only discovered in 2015, and it was named after him because it was found near Folsom Prison, which was made famous because of his song Folsom Prison Blues. He was also famously known as the Man in Black, and the males are mostly a solid black colour, with the females being slightly lighter. To find one of the most striking tarantulas in the world, all you have to do is head over to the Caribbean, as this is where you can find the Antilles pink-toed tarantula. These colourful spiders range from pink to greeny blue, and if you're lucky enough to spot one in the wild, then you definitely aren't going to forget it. To find the largest spider in North America, you'll have to head back over to the mainland, as this is where you can find the Texas brown tarantula. Not only is this species the largest spider on the continent, but it's also one of the most common tarantulas in the southern US. They do have similar leg spans to a few other spiders in the area, but they have very bulky bodies, which means that they are quite heavy. Some of the largest specimens have a body length of around 7.8 centimeters, and they can reach a maximum weight of around 85 grams. This means that North America is fit for 4th place, and next up we'll be heading to the land of the giants. The land animals of Africa are among some of the largest and deadliest in the world, so it makes sense that they have some pretty chunky spiders too. This continent isn't only known for its giant 8-legged creatures, as it also has a few oddball species too. There's the Lion King spider that almost appears to have a lion's face on its back, and the African scorpion tail spider, which will sometimes mimic scorpions when threatened. Most spiders aren't exactly known for being friendly with one another, with mates often killing and eating each other once they've consummated their marriage. Despite this, there are a few species of social spiders dotted around the world, and the African social spider is one of these species. They are often found in large colonies where they work together to catch prey, and these colonies can range from tens to hundreds of related spiders. To find one of the deadliest spiders on the continent, you'll have to head into the deserts of southern Africa, as this is where you can find Han's 6-eyed sand spider. The venom from this species can cause tissue necrosis, which can result in life-threatening wounds. There are plenty of giant orb-weaver spiders that can spin giant webs that you can accidentally walk into if you aren't careful, but Africa has one spider that's far larger than all of the rest. The king baboon spider has possibly the best name of any spider on the list, and they live up to this name by having quite big personalities. When threatened, they are highly defensive, often rearing up and showing their fangs. If you do manage to get bitten, the combination of their potent venom and their large fangs results in an extremely painful bite, but they aren't believed to be life-threatening to humans. They are relatively slow growing, but if they are able to survive for long enough, they can achieve a body length of around 6 centimeters, and they can reach a maximum weight of around 100 grams. This means that Africa and the king baboon spider are fit for third place, and for our next section we'll be heading east. Asia is home to a wide variety of weird and beautiful species, but tragically some of them are threatened with extinction. The peacock tarantula is only found in a relatively small part of India, and it's currently listed as critically endangered. They are sometimes illegally taken from the wild as they are popular in the pet trade due to their coloration, and much of their natural habitat has also been destroyed. In the mangrove forests of Thailand, you can find another striking species in the electric blue tarantula, and thankfully these guys aren't as rare as the aforementioned peacock tarantulas. The long-horned orb weavers are much smaller creatures, but they are arguably more flamboyant, but they are easily outdone by a very impressive imposter. If the jumping spiders couldn't get more interesting, there are some species that can perfectly mimic certain insects. The red weaver ant mimicking jumper doesn't really have a very creative name, but I guess it does exactly what it says on the tin. They mimic the ants because they are known for tasting bad and having a painful bite, and they are even able to intermingle with them, meaning that they can gain the protection of the colony. Just like a few other continents, Asia is also home to a few interesting huntsman spiders, and it turns out that the largest huntsman spider in the world is the largest spider in Asia. The giant huntsman spider can be found in the caves of Laos, and this is why they have such large spindly legs. They have the largest leg span of any living spider, with some of the largest specimens having a 30 centimeter span. If they were a little bulkier, then they could claim the first place spot, but with a body length of around 4.6 centimeters and a max weight of 167 grams, they'll have to settle for second place. So if you're heading into any caves in Southeast Asia, then it's a good idea to check the walls, as there could be a giant spider lurking in the shadows. For our final section, we'll be heading over to South America, which is home to a few giant and potentially dangerous arachnids. The Brazilian wandering spiders are famous for their potent venom, and really you have good reason to be cautious around them. They are called wandering spiders because instead of hiding in their burrows or on their webs at night, they choose to wander along the jungle floor in search of food. They also tend to be found near human inhabitation, so there's a relatively high chance of encountering them. This species is not only dangerous because of the toxicity of its venom, but also because it tends to hang on and inject a very high dose. Thankfully, in a lot of cases, they will choose to dry bite humans, but if their venom does find a way into your system, then there are some very strange symptoms. A wandering spider's venom can cause an hours-long painful erection, which would at least bring some comedy to a potentially life-threatening situation. There are some effects that are less funny, such as severe pain, high blood pressure, and vomiting, and if you're really unlucky, then it can kill you in under an hour. There are also some beautiful giants here, such as the bloom tarantulas, but this continent is famous for being home to one species in particular. Believe it or not, the giant bird eater doesn't eat birds very often at all, with it mostly feeding on invertebrates and amphibians. Despite their menacing appearance, they are mostly gentle giants, and they'll usually warn you a few times before biting. They are known for making warning sounds when threatened, and they'll even rub the hairs on their abdomen, which causes their irritating hairs to become airborne. If you really want to annoy them, then they will eventually bite you with their inch-long fangs, and they have quite a lot of power behind these fangs. The Goliath bird eater has a maximum length of around 13 centimeters, and they can reach a maximum weight of around 175 grams. This means that they easily take the first place spot, and most animals in their ecosystem have reason to fear them. This planet was once home to giant birds that would tower over most other animals alive today, but tragically the majority of these animals have been lost to time. Thankfully, there are still some giant flightless birds that still walk this earth, and these dinosaurs are the largest of their kind. In today's video, we'll be travelling around the world ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest flightless bird, and we'll be ranking them based on their maximum weight in the wild. Unfortunately, not all of the continents are blessed with flightless birds, so to start off with, we'll have to cover the 2 areas where flightless birds are absent. Because flightless birds are mostly a southern hemisphere thing, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that Europe and North America have no native flightless birds. Europe does have large populations of invasive and feral flightless birds such as the greater rhea, and there were once true giants that roamed here. So-called giant ostriches could have weighed up to 500 kilograms, and it's believed to be the largest bird to have ever existed in the Northern Hemisphere. The great auk is another large bird that could have featured for both Europe and North America, but we humans brought about their demise in the 1840s. It's a similar story in North America with all of its flightless species being long gone, but I'm sure some people will be happy that there's no need to worry about bumping into the deadliest extinct birds of the Americas. The terror birds were once apex predators that could be found across North America and South America, and it's possible that some of the largest species could have hunted man. Most of these giants started to disappear around 2 million years ago, but as we'll get into a little later, they do have some relatives that are still alive today. If we could travel back in time, the Atitlan or giant grebe could have featured, but invasive species and natural disasters led to them being wiped out by the 1990s. There are quite a few birds across both continents that are very poor flyers but can actually fly, and it's a real shame that all of the truly flightless birds have been wiped out. Because the Atitlan grebe went extinct more recently, I've decided to rank North America higher than Europe. So Europe slots in at number 7 and North America takes the 6th place spot. Now we've gotten that out the way, we can start to take a look at many of the beautiful flightless birds that are still with us, and we'll start off by travelling south. South America is home to a few different flightless birds that each play very different roles in their respective ecosystems, but one of the most distinctive species is found offshore. The flightless cormorant is endemic to the Galapagos Islands, and it's the heaviest cormorant alive today. It takes advantage of the lush waters that surround these islands, and it lives a very similar life to that of a penguin. Strangely, it does have to compete with a penguin in its day-to-day life, with the Galapagos penguin being another flightless bird that can be found here. This bird is the only penguin species that can be found north of the equator, and it's one of the smallest penguins in the world. These two animals are often spotted together, and they sometimes benefit from the other's hunting style. To find some of the larger flightless birds, you'll have to head over to the mainland, and if you head south, you'll find even more penguins. Many of the iconic Antarctic penguin species also inhabit South America, but there are a few species that are endemic to the continent. The Humboldt penguin lives along the Pacific coast of Peru and Chile, and it spends most of its days hunting schooling fish and squid. In some parts of their range, they share their habitat with a close relative in the Magellanic penguin, which is another species that's endemic to South America. These clumsy birds are full of character, and are sometimes spotted in large numbers on land where they dig their burrows. Even though these striking little guys are relatively large for a bird, they are dwarfed by another penguin species in their ecosystem, and it's one of the largest flightless birds on the continent. The king penguin is the second largest penguin in the world, with a maximum weight of around 18 kilograms. They mostly feed on fish, squid, and krill, and they'll dive as deep as 300 meters to catch their desired prey. They can be found in giant colonies along the coasts of Patagonia, and their presence attracts certain predators such as orcas. The steamer ducks are a group of marine ducks that also share their homes with many penguin species, and all of them, apart from the aptly named flying steamer duck, are flightless. The two Sarima species are the last remaining members of an order that the terror birds were a part of, and they have a few behaviours that seem very terror bird-like. Even though these birds are ground-dwelling, they aren't flightless, so unfortunately they have no place in this video. In some inland waters, you can find a few flightless water birds such as the giant coot and the Titicaca grebe, but the largest birds on the continent are very much ground-dwelling species. The two rhea species are the largest birds in South America, with the greater rhea being the largest species. They can be found in a variety of different open habitats across their range, from grasslands to swamps and even deserts. In these areas, they mostly feed on plant matter, but when lizards and frogs appear in front of them, they are more than happy to try them out. The life of an adult rhea is far from carefree, as there are a few predators that you'll need to look out for. Wild dogs and the maned wolf will hunt them from time to time, but their main enemies come in the form of cats. Jaguars will hunt them in the areas where their ranges overlap, but their most common enemy is the cougar. To catch and kill a greater rhea, you not only have to be fast, as they can run at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, but you also need to have muscle, as they can reach a maximum weight of around 40 kilograms. This size means that the greater rhea and South America slot in at number 5. And for our next section, we'll be heading somewhere much colder. Antarctica is mostly known for 3 groups of animals in particular: pinnipeds, cetaceans, and flightless birds. Penguins are the most common birds in Antarctica, with some species being found in colonies with populations larger than cities. There are 8 species of penguin that can be found in the Antarctic and subantarctic regions, but only 2 of them call the Antarctic mainland their home. The Adelie penguin is the most widespread penguin species, being found along the whole coast of the Antarctic continent. It's a master in the water, mostly feeding on krill and fish, but of course, like many others of its kind, it needs to keep an eye out for the formidable leopard seal and the even more terrifying orca. It's known for being a particularly feisty penguin species, often fighting potential predators and even researchers. This is despite the fact that it's the smallest penguin species that can be found in Antarctica, and this little bird really doesn't act its size. The Adelie penguin shares the Antarctic mainland with another endearing species, and it happens to be the largest penguin in the world. The emperor penguin is an incredibly hardy animal, as some of them spend their entire lives in fast ice environments, enduring some of the coldest temperatures on this planet. As well as being the largest, they are also the rarest of the Antarctic penguins, with an estimated population of around 220,000 breeding pairs. This population might not sound too bad at first, but climate change has had a massive effect on their numbers in recent years, as warmer temperatures melt the sea ice that they rely on. To be able to survive in such harsh conditions, they need to consume a lot of food, and in the water they have a few impressive abilities that help them to catch their prey. They can dive to depths of around 565 meters, and they can stay under the surface for 30 minutes at a time. This allows them to catch enough fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods to reach a maximum weight of around 45 kilograms, which is around the same weight as a sun bear. The bulky emperor penguin means that Antarctica slots in at number 4, and there are few birds that rival its swimming prowess. Now, the next 2 continents have the same largest flightless bird, but as I've decided to do in other videos in this series, I'm going to rank one continent higher than the other. I'll be judging both of the continents based on the other flightless birds that can be found there, as well as the shared largest species. So to start off with, we'll be heading over to Asia. Now, as we've already covered, flightless birds are mostly a southern hemisphere thing, so most of Asia's flightless birds are found in the south, and more specifically Southeast Asia. Now, flightless birds have a pretty big weakness, and that's that they're very vulnerable to land predators. This is why most flightless birds have been discovered on remote isolated islands, and this also means that a large number of species have gone extinct in recent years. When invasive animals such as rats and cats are introduced onto isolated islands, the flightless birds are usually the animals that suffer the most. It's heartbreaking looking into how many distinctive birds have disappeared over the years due to invasive species, and this also explains why some of the flightless birds in more competitive ecosystems are real giants. Thankfully, there are still a few flightless rails that can be found on some of the Asian islands, and in New Guinea, if you're really lucky, you can spot some dinosaurs that don't look too dissimilar from their extinct relatives. There are 3 cassowary species alive today, with the southern cassowary being the largest and most well-known species. The southern cassowary is arguably the most dangerous ground-dwelling bird to humans, but in the vast majority of cases, if you respect them and give them space, then they'll choose to leave you alone. Their powerful kicks paired with their long sharp inner claws are a deadly combination, but there have only been 2 confirmed cases where cassowaries have killed humans. One of them dates back to the early 1900s, and the other was back in 2019 when a Florida man was killed by one that he was keeping as a pet. These birds almost exclusively feed on forest fruits and nuts, with many of these fruits being too toxic for other animals to process. Because of their fruity diet, they are mostly limited to the tropical rainforests, but they do like to stroll along the beach from time to time. Due to their size and their deadly kicks, fully grown individuals only really need to fear crocodiles, but despite this, their numbers have been declining in recent years. Habitat loss, hunting, and road collisions have massive effects on their numbers, and more needs to be done in the future if they are to bounce back. The southern cassowary is the largest flightless bird in Asia, as they can reach a maximum weight of around 85 kilograms. This quirky dinosaur slots Asia in at number 3, but as I've already covered, it's also the largest bird on our next continent. The reason I've decided to rank Oceania higher than Asia in this video is simply due to how many distinctive and large flightless birds can be found on the continent. Many of the small island nations boast weird and wonderful flightless birds that can't be found anywhere else in the world, and famously New Zealand has always been dominated by birds. The moas are an extinct group of flightless birds that once called New Zealand home, and the largest species could reach heights of around 3.6 meters. Of course, not all of the moa species were this large, and at one point in time, some of them were hunted by the largest eagle to have ever existed. Unfortunately, these giant birds are long gone, but there are still plenty of flightless birds that can be found here. The kakapo is the world's only flightless parrot, and these chubby birds have quite the personality. They are known for being naturally curious and will often approach humans, and conservationists working with these birds claim that they have distinct personalities. Unfortunately, the kakapo is critically endangered, with there being only around 237 of them alive today. Because of the many invasive species that have been introduced into New Zealand over the years, there are many other species that are in the same position as the kakapo. The South Island takahe was once thought to have gone extinct before it was rediscovered, and this unique bird is the largest living member of the rail family. The kiwis have become some of New Zealand's most famous residents, and they are actually the smallest living ratites. This group also includes cassowaries, ostriches, and emus, but the kiwis are thought to be more closely related to the extinct elephant birds of Madagascar. The elephant birds are thought to have gone extinct around 1,000 years ago, and the largest known species is thought to be the largest bird to have ever existed. It's hard to believe that these extinct giants would have much in common with the kiwi, but I guess looks can be deceiving, and kiwis do have a pretty impressive roar. Of course, there are many other distinctive land-dwelling birds here, such as the weka, and there are also a few penguin species that can't be found anywhere else in the world. Because New Zealand had no predatory land mammals for such a long time, its marine animals are known to travel far inland, such as the Fiordland penguins and the New Zealand sea lion. Just like New Zealand, Australia also has a few penguin species along its shores, with one of them being the smallest penguin in the world. The aptly named little penguin can be found in both Australia and New Zealand, and it's another bird that's been heavily affected by invasive species such as foxes. Thankfully, in some areas across their range, the locals have banded together to eradicate foxes on some islands, and this has helped them to bounce back in amazing ways. Along some of Australia's islands you can find some flightless rails, but on the mainland there's a giant bird that's won a war against man. The emu is the tallest bird on the continent, and it's the third tallest bird in the world. It's extremely adaptable, being found across the majority of Australia, and this giant range means that they need to adapt to a variety of different habitats. They communicate with each other using deep drumming booming sounds, and if you happen to hear a lot of these in quick succession, then it's likely that there's an emu nearby that's looking for a mate. The emu is sometimes targeted by the land predators that inhabit modern-day Australia, but you either need to be really fast or you need to have incredible stamina to catch them. They are capable of reaching speeds of up to 31 miles per hour, and they have a maximum weight of around 60 kilograms. All of the many flightless birds on the continent, as well as the southern cassowary, mean that Oceania comes in at second place. And if you haven't guessed already, next up is Africa. There are a wide variety of ground-dwelling birds in Africa, but most of these birds do have the ability to fly. Because there are so many predators that are great bird hunters across the continent, flight is essential for birds that aren't able to fight back. This is unless you have another escape route such as jumping into the ocean, which the African penguins of the south coast are known to do when they spot danger. This is part of the reason why some of the only flightless birds in Africa are the largest birds in the world, and only the deadliest and fastest predators can target them. There are two ostrich species alive today, the Somali ostrich and the common ostrich. The best way to tell these two species apart is to look at the skin and the feathers of the males, as the Somali ostrich is also known as the blue-necked ostrich, as it has a blue-grey colour to its skin instead of the pink of the common ostrich. The common ostrich is the larger of the two species, with some of the largest specimens reaching weights of around 157 kilograms. This bird is the fastest bipedal animal, as they can run at speeds of up to 43 miles per hour over short distances. Even if a predator is able to catch up with them, they still need to face their rib-shattering kicks, and this is why most predators leave them alone. An ostrich that's detected a predator is almost impossible to catch and take down, so most successful ostrich hunters have to catch them off guard. This is a lot harder than it sounds, as ostriches have excellent vision, with them possessing the largest eyes of any land animal. Really, no other bird, flightless or not, comes close to the common ostrich, and that's why Africa easily takes the top spot. Today, the largest land animals on the planet are all mammals, but some of these creatures are dwarfed by the mammals that are unfortunately no longer with us. Thanks to fossil evidence and creatures that have been found preserved in permafrost, we have a good idea how many different species of extinct megafauna lived and how they looked. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at both the giant land animals alive today and the giants that have disappeared, as we'll be ranking the largest land mammals to have ever existed. I'll be ranking these animals based on their estimated maximum weight, and I'll be comparing their weights to modern day animals to put the measurements into perspective. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, we can take a look at our first mammal, and to find it, we'll be heading over to Australia. Today, Australia isn't really known for having any giant native mammals, as the largest mammals on the continent are invasive, such as camels and water buffalo. Despite this, if you go back far enough, Australia was actually home to a few different giants, but not all of them were mammals. Megalania was the largest member of the monitor lizard family, and it was possibly the largest terrestrial lizard to have ever existed. These predators would have been spoilt for choice when looking for prey, as there were prehistoric giant kangaroos that could reach up to 2.7 meters tall, and there were giant koala and wombat relatives such as Diprotodon. These marsupials are thought to be the largest mammals to have ever lived in Australia, and they were so large that only marsupial lions and crocodiles could target them. It's believed that the largest species could have measured a whopping 3 meters at the shoulder, and it could have weighed up to 3.5 metric tons. To put that into perspective, that's around 8 fully grown polar bears, or around 30 Dwayne "The Rock" Johnsons. This means that the Diprotodon takes the 14th place spot, and it's a shame that they're no longer with us today. For our next section, we'll be heading over to Africa, and we'll be taking a closer look at one of the largest and most dangerous mammals alive today. Hippos are extremely unpredictable and powerful animals, and if you're unfortunate enough to meet one in the wild, then you better hope that it's in a good mood. Their size and aggression are some of the main reasons why they've been around for so long, because you'd have to be a pretty crazy predator to try and hunt a fully grown hippo. Our modern day hippos have existed as a distinct species for around 1 to 2 million years, but there were a few other hippo species that once roamed the earth. A few of these species are thought to have been larger than our modern day hippos on average, but they all reached a similar maximum size, which is why I'm including all of them in this section. You might wonder what would have caused the other hippo species to go extinct, as they're such formidable animals, and the simple answer is climate-related habitat loss and possibly human hunting. Unfortunately, we likely played a role in the extinction of many different megafauna species around the globe, and there's evidence to suggest that we scavenged or even possibly hunted hippopotamus gorgops. Modern day hippos and their extinct ancestors can reach a maximum weight of around 4.5 metric tons, which is around the same weight as 7.5 moose, or around 90 Natalie Portmans. This means that hippos slot in at number 13, and they're possibly the most aggressive species that will make an appearance in this video. For our next section, we can remain in Africa, as we'll be taking a look at another giant that can be found on the continent. The white rhino is the largest extant rhino, but as we'll get into a little later on in the video, it isn't the largest rhino to have ever lived. Like the hippo, they are rarely challenged once they are fully grown, and the biggest danger to an adult white rhino is another rhino or an African elephant. Back in the 1990s, a group of juvenile African elephants killed over 60 rhinos, but this was under very strange circumstances, and elephant attacks on rhinos are still relatively rare. Even though rhinos aren't really known for being social animals, the white rhino is the most social of all the extant species. They'll often form groups called crashes, and they'll use their wide flat lips to graze on grasses. This diet allows the white rhino to reach a maximum weight of around 4.6 metric tons, which is around 2.9 Pacific walruses, or around 31.3 Shaquille O'Neals. The largest of today's rhinos is fit for 12th place, and next up is one of their extinct relatives. Elasmotherium was a large rhino that was found in Eastern Europe and Asia, and it's believed to have gone extinct around 39,000 years ago during the Quaternary extinction event. It was a member of a different subfamily to modern-day rhinos, and it would have looked significantly different to any living species. A well-preserved Elasmotherium horn has never been found, and this topic is a very controversial one that's often debated. Some believe that it had a massive horn that was very high up on its head, whereas others argue that it was impossible for them to have such a large horn due to the thinness of the outer wall of the dome and the lack of attachment points for a horn on the dome itself. It's often depicted as having long shaggy fur like many of the other giant mammals of its time, but it was a lot larger than the so-called woolly rhino, which is thought to have maxed out at around 3 metric tons. Like many other giant mammals of its time, it's believed to have gone extinct due to rapid climate change, and it makes you slightly jealous of the early humans and Neanderthals that were lucky enough to have witnessed these beasts. They are believed to have been able to reach a maximum weight of around 5 metric tons, which is around the same weight as 12.5 bottlenose dolphins, or around 40 Jack Blacks. This means that Elasmotherium slots in at 11th place, and it's the largest true rhino to have ever existed. For our next section, we'll be heading over to North America, and we'll be focusing on one of the most iconic prehistoric giants. Megacerops is a genus of extinct rhino-like browsers, and they have become famous for their distinctive horns which aren't like any other living mammal horns of today. Instead of having 2 horns, one behind the other like some living rhinos, they had 2 horns right next to each other going in different directions. Unlike modern rhinos, these horns were not made of keratin, as instead they were made of bone, and this means that they can be seen on their skulls. This could have meant that if they survived to the modern day, they would have been safe from poachers, unlike rhinos and elephants. But unfortunately, the last species went extinct around 34 million years ago. They were likely the largest animals of their time and had no predators once they were fully grown, but it likely disappeared once its forest habitats dried out and transformed into open plains. This is why climate change is such a big problem today, as history has shown us that it's been one of the biggest factors behind animal extinctions around the world. The largest Megacerops species are believed to have reached the same maximum weight as Elasmotherium, with them maxing out at around 5 metric tons. This is around the same weight as 5 female giraffes, or around 61 Daniel Craigs. Megacerops takes the 10th place spot, and even though they appeared in Ice Age, they were dead a long time before this. South America has seen many giant mammals come and go as the years have gone by, but not all of them are very well known. Hylarcotherium is an extinct genus of tapir-looking mammals, but they were many times the size of modern-day tapirs. To make things more confusing, there was a giant species of tapir that went extinct around 4,000 years ago, but even though Hylarcotherium appear tapir-like, they weren't closely related to these animals. They were found in northern Colombia and had sharp saber-like tusks, but there were other saber-toothed creatures that they had to look out for in their habitat. Despite their enormous size, they were still likely targeted by terrestrial crocodiles and saber-toothed mammals, but unfortunately we still know very little about them and their way of life. Few fossils of these animals have ever been found, but from the available fossils that we do have, experts predict that the largest species could reach a maximum weight of around 6.4 metric tons. This is around the same weight as 123 cheetahs, or around 97 Timothy Chalamets. This strange tusked mammal is fit for the 9th place spot, and hopefully in the future we'll learn more about how it looked and its way of life. For our next section, we'll be staying in South America, as we'll be looking at a large group of mammals that still exist today. The 2-toed and 3-toed sloths are the only extant sloths alive today, but there were once many more, and some of these species were true giants. They varied greatly in size and shape, but some of the largest ground sloths were around the same size as modern-day elephants. Even though these animals originated in South America, they made it to North America around 8 to 9 million years ago, and they would go on to flourish across the continent. Due to their size and deadly claws, few predators challenged them, but it's believed that Smilodon and dire wolves could have picked off injured individuals or juveniles. During the late Pleistocene, there were around 30 different species across the Americas, so it's crazy to think that they are completely absent from modern-day ecosystems. It seems as though we humans played a role in their sudden disappearance, as over the years we have uncovered a lot of evidence to suggest that we hunted ground sloths on a regular basis. They made their last stand in Cuba around 3,800 to 4,500 years ago, which was soon after humans were thought to have made it to the island. Rapid climate change and a slow reproductive rate didn't help their situation, and it's a shame that we lost such an interesting group of mammals. The largest ground sloth species is believed to have reached a maximum weight of around 6.5 metric tons, which is around the same weight as 812 modern-day two-toed sloths, or around 120 Daniel Radcliffes. This means that the ground sloths slot in at number 8, and we can count ourselves lucky that we still have some interesting tree-dwelling sloths. The Asian elephant is the only living member in its genus, and it's the largest land animal in Asia today. Even though they are generally smaller than their African counterparts, they are actually the closest living relatives of mammoths, which we'll get to a little later on in the video. They are among the most intelligent and caring animals alive today, and this might be part of the reason why they have been around for so long, and how they have managed to survive when other members of their family have gone extinct. Due to their size, they have no natural predators in their ecosystem, but weak or young individuals have been taken by tigers in the past. Tragically, the biggest risk to an Asian elephant is man, with more than 450 of them being killed by humans because of human-elephant conflict each year. This is why it's essential that we find peaceful ways to coexist with these giants, and it's important to remember that we share this planet and we don't own it. Even though we've lost many giant mammals on our time on this earth, some of the species that we still have rank pretty high up on this list, and that's definitely the case for the Asian elephant. The largest Asian elephant ever weighed in at 7.2 metric tons, which is around the same weight as 36 large male alligators, or around 80 Nicolas Cages. The Asian elephant is not only giant as it's also highly intelligent and beautiful, and it's fit for 7th place on this list. To find our next land mammal, we can head to northern Eurasia and North America, as we'll be focusing on one of the most loved extinct animals in the world. The woolly mammoth is adored by many around the world, but this isn't necessarily because of its size. Yes, they were pretty giant animals, but there were a few other elephant relatives that were much larger. Instead, the woolly mammoth is loved because of how many well-preserved specimens that we find, and the possibility that we could clone them in the future. We have found remarkable specimens in permafrost, with some of them being found with intact fur and their mother's milk still in their stomachs. The ethics behind whether we should bring these animals back has always been a topic of debate, with some arguing that if we are the main reason why they disappeared in the first place, then it's our duty to bring them back. There are also experts that claim that they could help to mitigate climate change and slow down the thawing of the permafrost in which they are found. But each year we hear about how close we are to cloning them, but it never happens. As I mentioned, their closest living relatives are Asian elephants, and if you were lucky enough to have watched Prehistoric Park when you were younger like my brother and I, then you'll remember that Nigel Marven attempted to raise a woolly mammoth with some elephants, which is probably what would be done if we were to actually clone them. In the show, I think they actually used African elephants, but as Asian elephant embryos would be used in the cloning process, then it makes sense to pair them with Asian elephants instead of African elephants. Despite the fact that the woolly mammoth wasn't the largest of its kind, it was still a big woolly boy, being able to reach an estimated maximum weight of around 8.2 metric tons. This is around the same weight as 50 of the largest Komodo dragons, or around 93 Nigel Marvins. The woolly mammoth takes the 6th place spot, and next up is the last of our modern day animals. There are 2 species of African elephant alive today, but the African bush elephant is substantially larger than the African forest elephant. These animals have been around for millions of years because they are simply too large and powerful for any predators, and it also helps that like their Asian counterparts, they are extremely intelligent and live in family groups. Unfortunately, we humans have caused a massive decline in their population due to ivory poaching, with there being an estimated 26 million of them in the early 1800s, and today there are only an estimated 415,000 individuals. Thankfully, there are many conservationists that dedicate their lives to helping these animals and battling poaching, and hopefully in the future it'll be the poachers that are facing substantial declines. The African bush elephant is the largest land animal alive today, being capable of reaching an enormous 11 metric tons. This is around 1.9 times the size that Tilikum was, rest in peace, or around 91 Darth Vaders. The largest land animal alive today comes in at a respectable 5th place, and hopefully they can make a full recovery in the future. For our next section, we'll be heading up to northern Eurasia and northern North America, as we'll be taking a look at the woolly mammoth's much larger ancestor. The steppe mammoth is believed to be one of the largest, if not the largest mammoth ever, and it's the species that the woolly mammoth evolved from around 800,000 to 400,000 years ago. It likely had a layer of fur just like the woolly mammoth, as it was adapted to the colder environments in northern Eurasia and North America in the early to middle Pleistocene. They possessed enormous tusks that were far bigger than any modern-day elephants, with the largest example measuring over 4 meters long and weighing in at 213 kilograms. As you can probably guess from its name, it was perfectly adapted for life in mammoth steppe biomes, which were cold, treeless grassland environments. Mammoth steppe biomes have completely disappeared today, but they would have looked very similar to some of the steppe ecosystems in places such as Mongolia. The disappearance of their habitat and climate change are thought to be the main reasons why these giants went extinct, and the fact that they were so large meant that they needed a lot of food to survive. The warming climate led to steppe habitats transforming into wetlands and forests, which meant that they likely couldn't find enough food to survive. In their prime, the largest steppe mammoths could have reached a maximum weight of around 15 metric tons, which is around 1.8 woolly mammoths, or around 312 Sabrina carpenters. The steppe mammoth takes the 4th place spot, and next up we have another mammal with giant tusks. Borson's mastodon was an enormous mastodon species, and it roamed across Eurasia during the late Miocene and early Pleistocene. It had even longer tusks than the aforementioned steppe mammoth, with the largest ever measuring over 5 meters long. Unlike the steppe mammoth, these tusks also appeared to be front-facing, and they were a lot straighter with less of a curve. Unlike the mammoths that preferred mammoth steppe biomes, it's believed that Borson's mastodon was most at home in warmer forested habitats. Due to their size and weaponry, it's easy to imagine them as real-life Mumakil, and they might have been able to conquer nations if they fell into the wrong hands. They were thought to be able to reach a maximum weight of around 16 metric tons, which is around 4 times the size of the largest Indian rhinos, or around 70 times the size of Big Show during his prime. This means that Borson's mastodon takes the 3rd place spot, and next up is one of the strangest mammals to have ever lived. Paraceratherium is an extinct genus of hornless rhinoceratoids, which is a superfamily that contains modern-day rhinos. Strangely, they almost appeared like a mixture of rhinos, elephants, and giraffes, and due to their size, they must have been visible for miles around. Unfortunately, because they lived around 34 to 23 million years ago, we only have incomplete fossils of these giants, and much of their anatomy and way of life remains a mystery. It has a nasal incision that suggests that it had a prehensile upper lip or proboscis, and it's believed to have been a browser like some modern-day rhinos and elephants. It's believed that some of the largest species could have stood at 4.8 meters at the shoulder, which is around 1 meter shy of the tallest giraffes of today. Of course, they were much bulkier than the long-necked browsers that we still have today, and it's believed that they could weigh in at 20 metric tons. This is around 4.4 times larger than the largest hippo, or around the same weight as 312 Kevin Harts. This means that the largest Paraceratherium species comes in at a close 2nd place, and personally it's the mammal that I'd most like to see if I was able to travel back in time. For our final section, we'll be heading over to the Indian subcontinent, and we'll be taking a look at the largest elephant to have ever lived. Paleoloxodon nomadicus is an extinct species of prehistoric elephant, and it's believed to be the largest land mammal to have ever existed. It roamed the earth during the middle to late Pleistocene, and just like fellow oliphants such as Borson's mastodon, they were known for having giant straight tusks. Like a few other elephants of their time, they had a large crest on the top of their skulls, and this is thought to have been a crucial anchor point for the muscles that would support its giant head. It's hard to estimate exactly when these giants went extinct, but some experts have suggested that they disappeared around 25,000 years ago, which would have meant that modern humans would have lived alongside them for a while. They really must have been quite intimidating animals to be around, as they could measure up to 5.2 meters at the shoulder, and they could have weighed up to 22 metric tons. This is around 3 times the size of the largest Asian elephants alive today, or around 133 Eddie Halls. Paleoloxodon nomadicus easily takes the first place spot, and it's crazy to think that we lived alongside these beasts. Rodents are among the most successful mammals on the planet, dominating some of the world's most challenging environments. Some have developed incredible defenses to deal with some of the most formidable predators on the planet. Others are semi-aquatic ecosystem engineers, and some don't even appear to be rodents at first glance. One of the many factors that's made rodents so successful is their adaptability, as they'll often fill the niches of animals that appear to be absent in an ecosystem, and this is why many rodents are among the worst invasive species on the planet. Today, all around the world, they can be found in many different shapes and sizes, but in today's video we'll be focusing on the largest. That's because we're going to be travelling around the world ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest rodent. But unfortunately, to start off with, we have to make a short trip to a place that has no rodents at all. Like always, I'll be keeping this section short and sweet, as there are no rodents across the whole Antarctican continent. It's simply too cold for any rodents to live here, and even if they could survive the elements, there's not really anything that they can feed on. Some invasive rodent populations have done well on the subantarctic islands by feeding on bird eggs, but thankfully they haven't made it to the mainland. Antarctica's lack of any rodent species means that it slots in at number 7, and I'm sure that the penguins are glad that they don't have to fight off any rats. Oceania is made up of hundreds of small islands as well as the giant landmass that is Australia, and you'd assume that because Australia is so large it would have many rodent species. Surprisingly, Australia has a relatively small number of rodents, and there are a few reasons behind this. Marsupials dominate many of the landscapes here, and even though many of them look like rodents, they aren't very closely related. These animals fill ecological niches that rodents fill on other continents, and over the past few centuries, Australia has lost many of its native rodents too. After the introduction of invasive predators such as cats and foxes, many of Australia's native land mammals suffered, and this was especially the case for many of the small rodents. Thankfully, there are still some weird and wonderful rodents that thrive here, and one such animal is the ricali. This large rodent is sometimes referred to as the Australian otter, and that's because it plays a similar role in its ecosystem to otters, which are totally absent in Australia. In the forests, you can find a few different tree rat species that have a patch of fur at the end of their tails, and this sets them apart from most other rats. Unfortunately, these animals have been declining and disappearing at an astonishing rate, but thankfully there have been some rediscoveries too. On some of the smaller islands of Oceania, there have been some interesting rodent discoveries in recent years, with possibly the most remarkable case taking place in 2015. This was when the body of a strange giant rat was discovered, and later on in 2017 it was first identified as a species. The Vangunu giant rat was first caught on camera in 2021, and it's believed that these chunky rodents can weigh up to 1 kilogram. The largest rodent in Oceania is also found on an island that neighbours Australia, and this particular species is almost as elusive as the Vangunu giant rat. Unfortunately, there's not a lot I can really say about the subalpine woolly rat, as we still know very little about them. They were believed to be extinct for years until one was captured on a camera trap in October of 2025, and they appear to be limited to the mountains of Papua New Guinea. One thing that we do know about these mysterious mammals is that they are giants, as they have a maximum body length of around 55 centimeters and a maximum weight of 2 kilograms. The subalpine woolly rat slots Oceania in at number 6, and hopefully we'll be able to learn more about them in the future. For our next section, we'll be heading over to the land of the giants, and you have to be a pretty hardy animal to be able to survive here. Because many of Africa's ecosystems are so competitive, some of its rodents have come up with interesting ways to defend themselves. The maned rat is the world's only poisonous rodent, and it's believed that it gets its toxins from certain plants such as the poison arrow tree. It stores these toxins within its hairs, and it's surprisingly potent with only a few milligrams needed to cause heart failure in humans. The different species of mole rats choose to burrow underground to avoid predators, and some of them have some interesting looking adaptations. The giant root rat's anatomy is very strange, as its eyes are placed very high up on its head. This is so that they can peek out of their burrows and see what's going on without exposing too much of their heads, because if they do peek at the wrong time, they'll be picked off by Ethiopian wolves. Because of TV shows such as Kim Possible, the naked mole rat is the most famous rodent of its kind, and they have a few abilities that we are still yet to fully understand. Despite the fact that they are very small and mostly hairless, unless they are taken out by a predator, they are extremely resilient. They are renowned for their extreme cancer resilience, and they are able to live for 30 plus years and go without oxygen for up to 30 minutes. The Gambian pouched rat is another species that has a few special abilities, and some of them have been able to save human lives. In Cambodia, there are many undetected mines across the country that have remained here since the war, and around 10 to 20 people die each year after stepping on them. Thankfully, there are some people working tirelessly to try and rid the country of landmines, and the Gambian pouched rat is one of the best animals at detecting them. Certain rat celebrities such as Magawa and Ronin have detected hundreds of mines, and they do this for a banana or peanut reward. In Africa's deserts, you can find a few weird and wonderful jerboas and gerbils, but giants are very hard to come by. Because of the long list of formidable land predators across the continent, if you want to be a large rodent here, then you have to be able to fight back against attackers. The largest rodents in Africa have come up with a few interesting ways to do this, and you'd be a pretty foolish animal to try and hunt one. The African porcupines have very long striped quills, and if you're crazy enough to attack one, then you'll get these quills in your face. Most African predators make the mistake of biting them once, but after this they'll likely never make the same mistake again. These spines are not only painful, but they are also barbed, which makes them very hard to remove. And because most animals aren't blessed with hands like we are, sometimes these quills will remain in predators for months. The wounds that they cause can easily become infected, and in some of the rarest cases, this can lead to death. The Cape porcupine is believed to be the largest rodent in Africa, and you really don't want to mess with one as they can reach a maximum body length of around 90 centimeters and a max weight of around 30 kilograms. This means that Africa slots in at number 5, and next up we'll be heading north. Now our next two continents share the same largest rodent, but like I've done in similar videos in the past, I'll judge them based on other rodents that can be found on each continent. For this reason, to start off with, we'll be heading over to Europe, and really there aren't many giants here at all. Most European rodents are small yet iconic species, and unfortunately many of them are struggling in the wild today. The European hamster is currently listed as critically endangered, and this is mostly due to human-related factors such as pesticide use, urbanization, and light pollution. These tiny mammals are full of character, and even though they're small, they do their best to act tough if you corner them. Invasive species have had massive impacts on many of the native rodents, with red squirrels suffering due to the dominance of the grey squirrels, and the European water vole suffering due to introduced predators such as the American mink. One of the most successful invasive rodents also has a stronghold in many European countries, and it's often mistaken for Europe's largest rodent. The nutria or koipu has a massive range across the world, and this is because they were transported from South America for farming purposes. These rodents have proven to be very hard to contain, and their adaptability has allowed them to almost achieve world domination. In these videos, I only tend to focus and rank the native species in each section, but these animals have had such an impact that I felt like I needed to include them. The nutria does have a lot in common with the largest rodents in Europe and Asia, and in some parts of their range they even compete with them. The Eurasian beaver is one of the most important animals to have in a healthy wetland ecosystem, as they act as a keystone species and they are ecosystem engineers. They build dams that create new habitats for amphibians and fish, and by felling trees they create deadwood habitats which are great for insects and birds. There aren't too many differences between Eurasian and North American beavers, and this actually led to a massive mistake back in 1937. In Finland, the native Eurasian beavers were struggling, and because the Eurasian beaver and the North American beaver were once believed to be the same species, 4 female and 3 male North American beavers were introduced. Today, they are believed to outnumber the native beavers in Finland by over 2 to 1, with an estimated 10,000 to 18,000 of them in the country. If we were including non-native species, then the North American beaver would take the top spot, but the Eurasian beaver is pretty hefty too. They can reach a maximum length of around a meter, and they can achieve a maximum weight of 31 kilograms. This means that Europe takes the 4th place spot, and next up we'll be heading east. Now, as you can probably guess from its name, the Eurasian beaver is also found across large parts of Asia, and it's the largest rodent that can be found here. Unlike Europe, Asia also has other giant rodents thriving across its landscapes, which is why I've decided to rank it higher in this video. In the trees, you can find giant squirrels that can weigh over a kilogram, and on land you can find even more porcupines that look very similar to the giants of Africa. The Laotian rock rat may not appear to be very spectacular at first, but it's been described as a so-called living fossil. That's because this species and its family were thought to have gone extinct around 11 million years ago, but thankfully they managed to survive and they are the last remaining member of their family. As well as having many giant arboreal squirrels, Asia also has a few different flying squirrel species, with the red giant flying squirrel being the largest of its kind. In the Himalayas, if you're lucky, you'll be able to spot some characterful marmots, which always seem to be squabbling over something. Because of the presence of all of these giant rodents and the Eurasian beaver, Asia claims the 3rd place spot. And for our final 2 sections, we'll be heading over to the Americas. Because North America's landscapes differ greatly across the continent, there are a wide variety of rodents here that are adapted to different ways of life. Across most of the northern parts of the continent, you can find another spiky rodent in the North American porcupine, and despite the fact that they are much smaller than the African species, they are still not to be trifled with. Each individual can have more than 30,000 quills that are waiting to be lodged into your skin, and a young porcupine's quills harden just hours after birth. Prairie dogs are arguably one of North America's most iconic rodents, and just like the beavers, they are a keystone species. Their mound building encourages grass development and the renewal of topsoil, and once abandoned, their burrows are used by a whole host of animals. These tiny mammals also have one of the most sophisticated communication systems that have ever been decoded by science, and they use different chirps to describe predators that are approaching. They've proven to be capable of describing the colour of t-shirts that humans are wearing, which just makes you wonder if there are any other animals that are able to communicate in a similar way. On some of the Caribbean islands, you can find some large rodents that are truly unique, such as hutias and agoutis, which can also be found on the mainland. The southern grasshopper mouse is the perfect example of why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, because despite the fact that it looks like a small peaceful rodent, in the wild it acts more like a tiny wolf. They are known to howl at the moon with a sound that can travel up to 100 meters, and they are impressive predators, being able to tackle deadly scorpions such as the Arizona bark scorpion. Along the rivers and wetlands of Central America, you can find a giant semi-aquatic rodent, and it belongs to a genus that's mostly associated with South America. Because of their strange personalities and their size, most people are aware of capybaras, but the fact that there are 2 different species seems to shock people. The lesser capybara is slightly smaller than the greater capybara, and even though the vast majority of them are found in South America, their range does spread into North America. Even though these furry brown potatoes are pretty large with a maximum weight of around 28 kilograms, they aren't the largest of their kind, and to find the largest rodent on the continent we'll have to head north. As I previously mentioned, the North American beaver and the Eurasian beaver are very similar, and they usually reach a similar size. North American beavers do tend to be stockier and they have a larger skull, and it turns out that they can get a lot heavier too. They can measure up to 1.2 meters long, and they can achieve a maximum weight of 50 kilograms. This means that North America claims the 2nd place spot, and there should be no surprise where we're heading to next. South America isn't only the continent with the largest rodents, but it also seems to have extreme rodent diversity. There are the rabbit-looking maras that manage to survive in the arid grasslands of Patagonia, and these animals need to be swift to avoid the cougars that hunt here. In the Peruvian Andes, you'll find even more rodents that are pretending to be rabbits, and you'll also find the guinea pig, which I'm sure many of you have as pets. Even the forests and rainforests are full of distinctive rodents, such as the strange but beautiful pacas and the pacaranas. To find the largest rodent in the world, all you have to do is look along the rivers and lakes across the continent, because this is where you'll find the greater capybara. These semi-aquatic mammals spend most of their days feeding on grasses and aquatic plants, but their lives are very rarely carefree. Capybaras are some of the jaguar's favourite foods, and because they are great swimmers, they usually choose to jump into the water when they're startled. If the jaguar does manage to catch one, then it has a pretty substantial meal, as they can reach a maximum length of around 1.4 meters and a maximum weight of around 91 kilograms. This means that South America easily takes the first place spot, and no other rodent even comes close. Today, sharks come in many different shapes and sizes, and each of the 500 plus species have certain adaptations and behaviours that help them to survive in competitive ecosystems. Some perfectly blend into their environment to catch their prey off guard, others have resorted to walking on land to get at prey hiding in rock pools, and others live a life similar to that of whales, peacefully eating plankton. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at many of the weird and wonderful shark species that our oceans have to offer, as we'll be ranking 10 of the largest sharks in the world from smallest to largest. We'll be judging the sharks based on their maximum recorded weight instead of their length, as there are many sharks such as the thresher sharks that are very long but are relatively small compared to other sharks of a similar length. Without further ado, we can take a look at our first giant shark, and it owns possibly the most interesting adaptation of any shark species in the world. The great hammerhead is the largest species of hammerhead shark, and they are named after their distinctive adaptation. Inside its strangely shaped head there are thousands of electroreceptors, and they use these sensory organs to effectively detect prey on the ocean floor. In a way, it's easy to imagine this adaptation as a kind of biological sonar, and it means that they can detect prey that's invisible to the naked eye. They'll hunt animals as large as rays and other sharks, but they rarely attack humans despite their colossal size. According to the Florida Museum, there have only been 34 bites from all hammerhead species, with 17 of them being unprovoked and none of them being fatal. Most bites occur when the sharks are actively feeding, and the sharks end up biting people through mistaken identity or when they're in a frenzied state. Really, they have much more reason to fear us than we do to fear them, as in the past few weeks, finless corpses have been washing up on Floridian beaches. This is an obvious sign of poaching for the shark fin soup industry, and this is particularly worrying as the great hammerhead is listed as critically endangered. If a great hammerhead is able to reach maturity, then they can become massive fish, with a maximum length of around 6.1 meters and a max weight of around 580 kilograms. This is based on the current data that we have, but some believe that they can achieve weights of up to 900 kilograms. This would rank the great hammerhead much higher up on the list, but unfortunately these sizes have never been verified. For this reason, the great hammerhead takes the 10th place spot, but hopefully more giants will be found in the future. For our next section, we'll be heading into a dark and mysterious world, as we'll be taking a closer look at the blunt-nosed six-gill shark. Now, I'm sure many of you shark enthusiasts will be aware of this slow-moving, mysterious shark, but some of you might have never heard of it before. That's because human eyes very rarely get to view this creature, as they mostly stay near the ocean floor where they use their incredible sense of smell to find decaying animals. As well as scavenging, they will also hunt smaller fish and crustaceans, but thankfully they almost never turn their attention to humans, with there only being one reported attack since records began. Their mysterious way of living has proven to be a very effective survival strategy, as they have existed mostly unchanged for over 200 million years. This means that their ancestors were swimming in our oceans over 100 million years before T-Rex was around, and their deep-sea habitats have protected them from extinction events that have claimed other shark species. They have a few adaptations that help them to survive in the depths, such as their giant eyes and an extra gill slit that helps them to absorb more oxygen from the water. We can count ourselves lucky that they aren't interested in biting us, as they can reach a maximum length of around 5.5 meters and a max weight of 590 kilograms. This giant of the deep slots in at number 9, but as we'll get into a little later, they aren't the only monsters that hide in our ocean's depths. Our next shark lives a completely different life than the last, because instead of being a deep-sea, slow-moving species, it's actually the fastest shark in the world. Just by looking at the short fin mako, it's easy to see that it's built for speed, as it looks like a slightly skinnier, more streamlined version of the great white shark. They are actually in the same family as the great white, but instead of focusing on marine mammals like their cousins, they mostly target other speedy fish and squid. They'll go after some of the fastest fish in our oceans such as tuna and billfish, but sometimes they'll go after more difficult prey such as dolphins and sea turtles. To be able to catch these prey items, they can travel at speeds of up to 74 kilometers per hour, which is around the same speed that an ostrich can run on land. Thankfully, they are yet another species that almost never attacks humans, but there was a suspected mako attack off of the Canary Islands last year. The largest shortfin mako was caught off the coast of California in 2013, and this individual weighed in at a whopping 600 kilograms. Even though this specimen measured 3.3 meters long, it's believed that they can reach a maximum length of around 4.5 meters, and a shark of this length would be a similar size to their more formidable relatives. So even though they are incredibly deadly sharks, they have sacrificed size for speed, but they are still fit for the 8th place spot. For our next section, we'll be heading back into the deepest parts of the ocean, as we'll be taking a closer look at the goblin shark. This shark shares many behaviours and traits with other deep-sea shark species, but it also has a few interesting tricks of its own. It has an incredible biting mechanism which allows them to shoot their jaws forward, and as you can tell by their relatively thin teeth, they mostly target smaller fish and cephalopods. Their lineage dates back to around 125 million years ago, and even though this isn't as far back as the six-gilled sharks, it's still pretty impressive. Unfortunately, we still know very little about them as they can be found at depths of up to 2 kilometers below the surface, but they are sometimes found in coastal waters with depths of only a few hundred meters, and this is when they are usually caught. Referring to these sharks as goblins may seem a little harsh, but they do have pale pinkish skin and a strangely long rostrum. They are actually called goblin sharks because of this strange rostrum, as Japanese fishermen noticed similarities to the Japanese legendary creature called the tengu, which is known for having a very long nose. For a long time, these sharks were believed to max out at around 200 kilograms, but this all changed in 2023 after a particularly large specimen was caught off the coast of Taiwan. This shark weighed in at 800 kilograms, and it measured in at a whopping 4.7 meters long. It's a real shame that this shark was caught in a net instead of being captured on film in its natural habitat, as it would have been fascinating to see how a goblin shark of this size would have behaved. This unusual predator slots in at number 7, and next up is arguably the weirdest shark in our oceans. The Greenland shark is often referred to as the zombie shark, and this is really quite a fitting name. You could easily mistake it for a shark that's been dead for years, as it moves very slowly through frigid Arctic waters, and most of them have parasites on their eyes which damage their vision and add to their unnerving appearance. Even though these sharks are eaten in places such as Iceland, if you decide to eat their untreated flesh, then it can result in death. Their meat contains high concentrations of urea and TMAO, which acts as a natural antifreeze, but if consumed, it causes symptoms similar to that of extreme alcohol intoxication, and if you eat enough, then you will perish. These giants even feed in a creepy way, as they get most of their food through scavenging, but they will also sneak up on sleeping marine mammals. If I was a seal, then I'd only sleep on land as I'd be terrified of this creepy shark, and all sorts of things have been found inside their stomachs. In the 1800s, it was claimed that a human leg was found inside one of these sharks, and other mostly land-dwelling mammals such as polar bears and reindeer have been found inside them too. Because they live in such cold waters, they have an extremely low metabolism, and this means that they can live an incredibly long time. It's estimated that some of the oldest Greenland sharks have been around for 500 years, which makes them the longest living vertebrate on Earth. Because not many people are willing to go for a swim in freezing deep waters, attacks on humans are unheard of. But if you perish at sea and your body sinks to the ocean floor, then they will probably take a bite out of you. A 500-year-old Greenland shark is among the largest fish in our oceans, as they can reach a maximum length of around 6.4 meters and a maximum weight of around 1.2 metric tons. So even though they aren't the largest sharks, they are arguably the most terrifying, and they're fit for the 6th place spot. Our next shark has a mysterious, almost mythical reputation, as it's a species that's very rarely sighted, but it fascinates many of us around the globe. Unsurprisingly, for the final time in this video, we'll be heading into the depths, as we'll be focusing on the megamouth shark. As you might be able to guess from this shark's appearance and its name, it's a filter-feeding species that spends most of its days filtering small organisms from the water. Despite the fact that it's mostly a deep-sea species, it does feed near the surface of the water at night, which is when they sometimes come into contact with humans. These sharks are extremely rare, with them only being discovered in 1976, and only 300 specimens have ever been observed or caught. This unfortunately means that we know very little about them, but what we have discovered is pretty interesting. In 2023, a pregnant female was discovered, proving that they give birth to live young, and they have an iridescent, possibly bioluminescent upper mouth, which attracts their prey in a similar way to the anglerfish. They are one of only 3 extant filter-feeding sharks, and the other 2 will be making an appearance a little later on. Based on the limited specimens that we have studied, it's believed that they can reach a maximum length of around 6 meters and a maximum weight of around 1.25 tons. Hopefully we'll learn more about these mysterious creatures in the coming years, and it's possible that they could grow even larger than the ones that we've managed to observe. Finally, we can emerge out of the deepest parts of the ocean, as our next species is more at home patrolling tropical beaches. The tiger shark has quite an infamous reputation, and they're often referred to as the garbage cans of the sea. This is because they aren't the pickiest eaters, and they'll try pretty much anything at least once. Back in May of 2022, a tiger shark was witnessed regurgitating a whole echidna, and they'll even eat non-biological items such as chicken coops and unexploded bombs. This opportunistic feeding style means that they can take advantage of a variety of different ecosystems, and it allows them to easily adapt when certain prey sources become scarce. Unfortunately, this also means that they aren't scared when it comes to targeting humans, as they are one of the big 3 species that are responsible for the most fatal attacks on humans. Their teeth are perfect for slicing pieces of flesh, and their bite is so strong that they can sometimes crack the carapaces of sea turtles. Despite the potential danger, scuba divers swim with tiger sharks on a regular basis, and they can be redirected away from divers with a push on the snout. In the past, their eat-anything mentality has actually aided in solving murder mysteries, such as when a tiger shark in Australia vomited up part of an arm. Most tiger sharks are much smaller than some of the previously featured sharks, but in the past we have discovered a few giant tigers which push them higher up on the list. The largest recorded specimen was a pregnant female that was caught off the coast of Australia, and this shark measured 5.5 meters long and weighed over 1.5 metric tons. There are rumours of even larger tiger sharks, but so far these reports haven't been verified, so for now they will remain in the 4th place spot. Our next shark is easily the most formidable shark alive today, and it's a species that can hunt almost all of the animals that it comes across. The great white shark is often viewed as a mindless man-eating killer, but these creatures are often misunderstood. Yes, they will prey on humans, but this is a very rare occurrence, and channels such as the Malibu Artist show just how often they swim among us without anybody noticing. They are capable of targeting animals as large as elephant seals, but they will also scavenge too and can often be spotted feeding on whale carcasses. Unfortunately, 2026 has seen an increased rate of shark attacks so far, with an unusually high number of attacks happening around Australia. Surfers are the great white shark's usual targets, as surfers are usually found in areas where great white sharks are hunting for marine mammals. Despite their size and power, they are still easily picked off by the true masters of the ocean, the orcas, and studies have shown that they will leave an area if they sense that orcas are nearby. If you're a marine mammal and you're being hunted by a great white shark, then you might not notice until the last second, as they are known for attacking from below at great speed, often breaching out of the water. If a great white shark does manage to avoid orcas, then they can turn into giants, as they can reach a maximum length of around 6.1 meters and a max weight of 2.25 metric tons. This means that the deadly great white shark takes the 3rd place spot, and our final 2 sharks are in a league of their own. Our next shark is another filter-feeding species, and it has quite a menacing appearance. The basking shark is the perfect example of why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, because if you find yourself in the water with this fish, it can be pretty intimidating, but it feeds almost exclusively on plankton. This often leads to people panicking when they see them in the water, but really they're pretty docile animals and divers around the world love to swim with them. It doesn't help when people seem to intentionally misidentify them, and I can't be the only person who's seen this video reposted a million times claiming that it's a great white shark in Norway. One of the few times that they can be dangerous is when they breach out of the water, and this is thought to be a way for them to get rid of parasites. They are believed to be the largest fish that's capable of doing this, and it must be pretty amazing to witness in the wild. They feed by swimming through clouds of plankton and filtering organisms from the water, and by feeding in this way they can filter through around 2 million litres of seawater per hour. This protein-rich diet allows them to reach some pretty impressive sizes, as they max out at lengths of around 12.3 metres, and they reach a maximum weight of around 8 metric tons. This means that the basking shark takes the 2nd place spot, and our final species shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. The whale shark is the largest shark and the largest fish in the world, and they have a few adaptations that allow them to claim this title. They have extremely wide mouths which allow them to eat as many small creatures as possible, and they have a giant caudal fin which allows them to effortlessly cruise long distances in search of food. As well as being large, they are also an incredibly beautiful species, but if you're lucky enough to see them in the wild, then please don't touch them and observe them from a distance. Unlike most other giant sharks, they have been successfully kept in captivity, and this is because they don't require constant fast-forward movement to breathe. Despite this, it isn't exactly ethical to keep the largest fish in the world in an aquarium, and whale sharks in captivity usually have shortened lives and health problems. Not even the largest aquarium in the world would be able to house the largest of whale sharks, as they can reach a maximum length of around 20 meters and a maximum verified weight of 21.5 tons. It's rumoured that they can get much larger than this, but as you can imagine, it's pretty hard to accurately measure an animal of this size. The whale shark is easily the largest shark in the world, and these gentle giants are among the most graceful animals on the planet. Lizards can be found at completely different ends of the food chain, with some being relatively small insect eaters, and others being giant apex predators that can even hunt man. In today's video, we'll mostly be focusing on the latter, and there are a few giants that inhabit some of the world's most competitive ecosystems. In today's video, I'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest lizard, but of course I won't be including invasive species. I'll be ranking the lizards based on their maximum weight in the wild, as some captive lizards can be double the weight that they are in the wild due to overfeeding, and these individuals are unlikely to be able to hunt successfully in their natural environment. Without further ado, we can head to our first location, and unfortunately for regular viewers, this section will feel like a bit of deja vu. To put it bluntly, Antarctica is simply too cold for lizards or any other reptiles, so it should be no surprise that we're visiting Antarctica first. There are a surprising number of reptiles that can survive freezing temperatures for parts of the year, but Antarctica is simply too harsh for any of these animals. Antarctica also has a very small number of insects and few plants to speak of, and these foods are what make up the vast majority of small to medium-sized lizards' diets. Around 250 million years ago, there was a lizard-looking reptile that could be found here, but if we go this far back in time, Antarctica was a very different place, and it was still part of Pangaea. I'm still trying to find an interesting video idea for this series where Antarctica doesn't come in last place, but until then it will remain the punching bag and it slots in at 7th place. If you're looking for giant lizards, then Europe isn't really the best place to start, but it does have a few weird and wonderful species. One group of lizards that do very well across the continent are the legless lizards, which are often confused for snakes. One of the best ways to tell them apart is to look for external ear holes or eyelids, as snakes lack both of these features and they're pretty easy to spot. The legless lizards of Europe mostly feed on slow-moving invertebrates such as snails, but larger species such as the European glass lizard is large enough to feed on small mammals. If you go back a few million years, one of the largest legless lizards was found here, with some species believed to have reached lengths of around 2 meters. A lizard of this size could hunt some pretty substantial animals, but unfortunately we still know very little about them. Most of the other lizards on the continent are small, fast, and mostly feed on insects and other invertebrates, and there are a few geckos that can be found here too. Europe doesn't have as many colourful lizards as other warmer continents, but a few species really stand out, such as the striking European green lizard. The largest lizard in Europe isn't quite as colourful, but it's still pretty distinctive, and to find it you'll have to head to the southwest of the continent. The ocellated lizard is mostly found in the arid habitats of Spain, Portugal, and southern France, with them commonly being found around olive groves and vineyards. Even though they are easily the largest lizards in Europe, they still have to keep an eye out for predators, with many birds of prey and carnivorous mammals targeting them. Like most other lizards of its size, it mostly feeds on insects, bird eggs, and other reptiles, but in some rare cases, large individuals will hunt mammals. This protein-rich diet helps them to outgrow all other European lizards, with them measuring up to 60 centimeters in length and weighing up to 500 grams. This means that the ocellated lizard and Europe slot in at number 6, and from here on out the weights increase exponentially. There are hundreds of species of lizards that can be found in South America, and some of them have rare abilities that few other animals possess. The basilisk lizards, or Jesus Christ lizards, not only look like dragons, but as their name suggests, they have the ability to walk on water. They do this by moving at great speed, and by spreading their weight across their large hind feet. They are unable to do this for long periods of time, but it's a great option for escape if they're being pursued by a predator. These lizards can also be found over large parts of southern North America, but there's another group of semi-aquatic lizards that are endemic to South America. The caiman lizards are completely at home in the water, spending most of their lives feeding on aquatic invertebrates and amphibians. If you ignore the head, you could almost confuse them for a small crocodilian, and this reflects their roles in many aquatic South American ecosystems. In the rainforests, you can find a wide variety of colourful insect-eating lizards, but on land there's one group of lizards that dominates all others. Tegus are extremely adaptable lizards, being found in a wide variety of habitats across South America. The Argentine black and white tegu is the largest tegu species, reaching lengths of up to 1 meter in the wild. They have many physical similarities to monitor lizards, and this is a great example of convergent evolution, as they fill ecological niches similar to that of monitor lizards. Even though these reptiles are native to East and South America, they are also famously found in North America today, and they have a massive negative effect on the native bird and reptile numbers. One of the reasons why they are so destructive is the fact that they love feeding on eggs, and only a few of the native predators are large enough to target fully grown adults. The largest lizards in South America aren't found on the mainland, as instead they're found on a group of islands that are renowned for their biodiversity. The Galapagos Islands are home to a wide variety of endemic lizards, some of which are truly unique. The marine iguana is the only reptile that forages for algae in the ocean, and it's incredible to witness them doing this in the surf. Algae makes up almost all of their diet, and once they return to land they are mostly lethargic, and can often be seen basking and shooting sea salt from their nostrils. Further inland you'll find a few different colourful land iguanas, with the Galapagos land iguana being the largest. These yellow reptiles can actually hybridize with the marine iguanas, although these hybrids are very rarely seen. Charles Darwin wasn't too nice to these lizards when he first saw them, as he described them as ugly animals, and he said they had a singularly stupid appearance. It's not as if Charles Darwin was much of a looker himself, and personally I think they're pretty cool looking reptiles. They are primarily herbivorous, feeding on many of the endemic plants of the islands, and they get much of the moisture that they need from plants such as the prickly pear cactus. The Galapagos land iguana is the largest lizard in South America, as exceptionally large individuals can reach weights of around 14 kilograms. This means that South America slots in at 5th place, and for our next section we'll be heading north. North America shares many of its lizards with South America, but it does have a few reptiles that can't be found anywhere else in the world. The beaded lizards are mostly found in the arid and forested areas of Central America, and the most famous member of this genus is the Gila monster. These reptiles are extremely powerful for their size, and they possess a powerful bite and venom which is used to persuade potential predators to leave them alone. The horned lizards are another group of desert-loving reptiles, and they've come up with a rather strange way of deterring predators. In most cases, they'll remain still and rely on their camouflage, but if this fails, they will puff themselves up before shooting blood from their eyes. Not all species of horned lizards are able to do this, but some of them can shoot blood up to 1.5 meters away. This technique not only confuses predators, but it also tastes foul to canines and felines, and these extreme strategies are needed as most species are very small and vulnerable. There are also many colourful anoles and legless lizards that can be found on the continent, but many claim that the collared lizard is one of the most beautiful species that can be found here. These lizards are called so due to the markings around their necks, and they're known for being very feisty and are quick to battle their rivals. Just like South America, North America's largest lizards are found offshore, with the true giants being found on the Caribbean islands. There are a few different iguana species dotted around the many islands, and the most striking species is also the largest species. The blue iguana is endemic to the island of Grand Cayman, and it's the heaviest iguana in the world. At one point in time, it was considered to be a subspecies of the Cuban iguana, but today it's been reclassified as a separate species. We are very lucky that this reptile still walks this earth today, as it almost completely disappeared off the face of the planet. It was most likely abundant before European colonization, but by 2003 there were only thought to be around 15 remaining in the wild. Their decline was mostly due to predation from invasive species such as cats and dogs, but thanks to conservation efforts and captive breeding, they are starting to bounce back. Not only are these lizards rare, as they are also giants, with a maximum weight in the wild of around 15 kilograms. The blue iguana slots North America in at 4th place, and hopefully their numbers will continue to grow in the future. Oceania is known for its vast array of reptiles, with some of them being the largest of their kind. The New Caledonian giant gecko is the largest gecko in the world, and unsurprisingly it's only found on New Caledonia. They can reach lengths of up to 45 centimeters, and they feed on both invertebrates and plants. The New Caledonian giant gecko is a great example of island gigantism, but on another island further south you can find a lizard imposter. The tuatara may look like and act like a lizard, but they're actually the only extant member of a distinct lineage. Its order dates back to the Triassic around 240 million years ago, but as it isn't actually a lizard, it has no place on this list. If you head into the tropical rainforests of New Guinea, you can find another tiny dragon, and this reptile is very popular in the pet trade. The red-eyed crocodile skink is both prehistoric looking and adorable, which hasn't really helped its situation in the wild. Most crocodile skinks in the pet trade are wild caught instead of captive bred, which is bad news for their numbers in New Guinea. This island is also home to a giant arboreal lizard, but its name is quite misleading. The crocodile monitor is one of the longest lizards in the world, and it spends most of its time hunting birds and mammals in New Guinea's rainforests and coastal mangroves. It got its name of crocodile monitor as the locals believe that it gives warnings of crocodiles nearby, but it's also viewed as an evil spirit. In southern New Guinea and Australia you can find a very angry reptile, and it shares a few similarities with a certain reptile from Jurassic Park. For the frilled lizard, attack is the best form of defense, as it'll often charge at potential predators with its colourful frill raised. The frill is used to confuse and threaten predators by making them appear many times their own size, and it shares this trait with the Dilophosaurus from a certain 1993 film. The largest lizard in Australia and Oceania is a monitor lizard, but this doesn't narrow down the potential lizards as much as you might think. There are 27 species of monitor lizard that can be found in Australia, with each species adapted for a slightly different way of life. The species we'll be focusing on today is perfectly adapted for the harsh deserts of Australia, and it's also considered by many to be the fastest reptile in the world. The parenti, like all other monitor lizards, is mildly venomous, and this helps them to tackle prey such as other reptiles and invasive mammals such as rabbits and hares. They are the apex predators in their ecosystem, and they have specialized respiratory muscles that not only allow them to reach speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour, but it also helps them to run for extended periods. If you're a small mammal or reptile in the deserts of Australia, then you stand little chance, as the parenti can reach weights of around 22 kilograms in the wild. Some sources claim that they can almost grow to double this size, but it's been very hard to find reliable evidence of this. For this reason, Oceania is fit for 3rd place, and the parenti is arguably the most impressive predatory land lizard. Africa is the land of giant land mammals, but its reptiles are pretty substantial too. Some of the most interesting lizards in Africa are found offshore, with Madagascar being a hub of biodiversity. Here you can find extremely well camouflaged geckos, and a colourful selection of chameleons. Even the more bland chameleons are one of a kind, such as the smallest chameleon in the world. The armadillo-girdled lizard is one of the stranger lizards of the African mainland, as it has a very creative way of preventing predation. Many lizard species will detach their tails to confuse and distract predators, but this lizard chooses to bite its own tail instead of offering it to predators. When threatened, it will curl up in a ball and bite its own tail, and this not only makes it very hard for predators to swallow them, but it also means that all of their spikes are facing outwards. This is how they get their common name of armadillo, but even this creative strategy might not be enough to protect it from the larger lizards in Africa. Like Oceania and Asia, Africa has a few different monitor lizard species, with one of the largest species being the Nile monitor. This lizard is found throughout most of sub-Saharan Africa, but as its name suggests, it's usually found near the Nile and other rivers. They are opportunistic feeders targeting pretty much all animals that are smaller than them, and they'll even target the deadly Nile crocodile by feeding on their eggs. The Nile monitor is considered to be the largest African lizard based on average weight, but there's another African monitor that has a greater maximum weight. Most rock monitors are smaller than the mighty Nile monitor, but the black-throated monitor subspecies is far larger than the rest. This reptile calls Tanzania home, and it lives a very similar life to the Nile monitor. This means munching on pretty much any animal that they can catch, and this allows them to reach some monstrous sizes. The very largest black-throated monitors can reach weights of around 27 kilograms, and this means that Africa slots in at 2nd place. Asia is easily the continent with not only the largest lizards in the world, but also some of the strangest lizards. The sail-fin lizards are known for their iconic sails on their backs, which means that they resemble extinct giants such as Spinosaurus. Just like Spinosaurus, they are mostly semi-aquatic, and they live very similar lives to the basilisk lizards of the Americas. The Draco lizards are a group of Asian gliding lizards, and they are capable of gliding to distances of up to 60 meters. This allows them to easily escape predators and conserve energy by easily moving from tree to tree, and you have to be a very elusive predator to be able to catch them. Of course, these small dragons aren't anywhere near the largest lizards in Asia, and once again, the largest lizards on the continent are monitor lizards. The Asian water monitor is one of the most adaptable lizards in the world, being found in a variety of competitive ecosystems as well as in cities and other urban areas. They spend a lot of their time in and around water hunting aquatic and semi-aquatic prey, but they are also known for taking advantage of the food and waste that we leave behind. If the Asian water monitor was on any other continent, then it would be the largest lizard on that continent. But of course, Asia is home to one of the largest land reptiles on this planet. The Komodo dragon is only found on a few small islands in Indonesia, and it's the undisputed apex predator in these areas. Its bulk and its venomous bite help it to take down mammals as large as water buffalo, and in some very rare cases, they have even claimed the lives of humans. In most instances, they can be persuaded to leave humans alone with a push from a stick or in desperate cases, a thrown rock. But if you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, then it could all end in tragedy. The Komodo dragon can reach a maximum weight of around 150 kilograms in the wild, which means that the largest specimens can easily overpower most humans. This of course means that Asia easily takes the top spot, as it's home to the largest and deadliest lizard in the world. I hope you guys enjoyed this selection of videos. Everything will be back to normal next week, so thank you for watching and I'll see you then.